I know that we typically save this for our like roundup episodes, but between Our Town or Trader Horn, which is the shittier movie?
We learned about animals in Trader.
It's like I was silent. I had to sit and think about that one for a second. The movie with literal human and animal death, and we're still like, Our Town really sucked, you guys.
Oh my God, I'm dead.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Lights, Camera, Accolade. We today are discussing the 13th year of the Oscars, lucky number 13, following up on the heels of probably what was the greatest year for Hollywood ever with some movies. Definitely, these are movies. I'm Sarah.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Abby.
And before we jump into the movies, I do want to set the scene for everyone in terms of what was going on when these movies were released in 1940. So, as we all know from history classes, World War II is continuing to escalate, and it is at the point now this year where the world really can't ignore it anymore. In the springtime, Germany conquered Denmark and Norway, and by the summer, France fell to Nazi Germany, which was kind of the big oh shit moment for many Americans and many other people abroad. The war is actively reshaping what civilian life looks like abroad in Europe, rationing, blackouts, evacuations. I believe Germany also started the Blitz towards the end of this year, which was its large-scale bombing campaign against London. So things got really, really heavy this year. And so in the US, y'all might remember that there was kind of that constant tug of war between isolationists, like we don't want to get involved, and interventionists who are saying we do need to get involved because this is crazy. So at that point, once France fell, it was clear that the US, even though they didn't officially make any moves at that time, they did begin ramping up preparations for war. So there was the first peacetime draft, Selective Training and Service Act. And I didn't know, but when I was researching it, honestly put kind of the delay of US wartime mobilization and intervention in perspective for me. But the end of 1939, the size of the US Army was like 190,000 men, like less than that. Versus mid 1941, it was 1.4 million. So, insane. So it even sounds like even if there had been national support in 1939 or early 1940, the US wasn't ready for war, especially of that scale. It's really a far cry from how we think of America. And I think so much of how we think of it is obviously contemporary and from what we see of how we entered World War II, but not a lot is known, I think, about our military size before that. We only had something like the 17th largest army in the world, which is
and we never
crazy.
Made that mistake again.
We never did. We stayed number one forever.
Never demobilize. Always be ready.
Always be ready. But yeah, so that put a lot of things in perspective for me. And with that, obviously, more men entering military training and being pulled out of their jobs. That also led to women increasingly starting to enter not only clerical jobs, which they were doing for, economic reasons as they recovered from the Great Depression, but also like industrial jobs as well, which lays the groundwork for more women's rights and stuff in future years. A slow moving progress there, but still
the era
something
of
there.
Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, and I feel like we get a very tiny taste of that in one of our movies, but not fully. But we're not there yet fully as a country. Because again, these movies, even though they came out in 1940, they might have been filmed, 39, etc. So it's just kind of starting. So I guess on to the movies. Theme-wise, I feel like Hollywood was kind of realizing at this point that we weren't really in that space to be able to just hold on to idealism and escapism and like all of that we saw last year. So many more of these felt more grounded or focused on realism and political awareness than previous years, for sure. Some more than others, because I think there is still that longing for nostalgia in some of these. But this year felt much more like a slap in the face with reality.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, consciously or otherwise, it does feel like the larger circumstances are casting some kind of shadow over this year. And, you know, it does feel like a bit of a hangover from last year, which was such a fun year. And it was a very hit or miss year. But I think for the most part, those movies that got it right this year were reflecting, for the most part, the reality of those changing circumstances. So I love the way you just kind of set that scene, because I think it really dovetails. It helps me, you know, conceptualize what I think was already going through my head. But when you set that context now, it makes more sense.
Yeah, agreed. And I think even the ones that don't necessarily touch on it directly, like they're still reacting to that in some way, shape, or form. But more on that later. I can think of a really great example of that. But
well, interesting to just note off your great point there about the mobilization of the military. This is really one of the critical things that kind of permanently pulls the United States out of the Great Depression, in the sense that you have the state making these large-scale investments, putting out these public contracts for the private sector to take up, and just putting people to work in a way that was sustained and well compensated and like unapologetically needed. It just drags this kind of flailing free market system into this national project. And, you know, like Abby referenced, we've not necessarily demobilized from that, but that was, this is the time period when our modern conception of mass employment and industrial, you know, economy really comes into being.
It's a real shame that the only thing that seems to get that, like, we're going to put everyone to work and work on something is war. Yeah. Imagine you could do that for virtually anything, but alas.
On that note.
Are you ready to talk about our first movie?
Yes.
All right. So The Grapes of Wrath is directed by John Ford with cinematography by Greg Toland and is based on the Steinbeck novel of the same name. It follows Tom Yode, an ex-con returning home to his family farm only to discover that they've been foreclosed on and are being forced west in search of new opportunities. Tom and the family make the brutal trip to California, suffering loss and hardship that's only exacerbated when they eventually find themselves trapped between the destitution of the shantytown and being exploited as cheap migrant labor by predatory landowners and lawmen all too willing to brutalize the desperate. While the film adaptation finds its way to a more indomitable ending than the source novel, The Grapes of Wrath remains concerned with the man-made violence that people face in the aftermath of the Dust Bowl. The poor are not animals, and maybe even men with blood on their hands deserve a fair shake.
Oh man, who wants to start on this one?
This movie looks beautiful.
So gorgeous. And I'm glad you called out the cinematographer, because this year was kind of one of the main years where I looked up specifically cinematographers because of several of the movies here. And Greg Toland was like half of them for the most part. And I didn't know this, but next year when we watched Citizen Kane, he was also the cinematographer there. And Orson Welles considered him the greatest cameraman who ever lived. And you can really see it because he did Grapes of Wrath. And then later we'll talk about The Long Voyage Home. Last year, Wuthering Heights. And the movie, they just look so incredible.
They look like 10 years further in the future than everything else.
Yes.
It's wild.
Well, it really makes you realize, too, that there was a loss in the transition to color, in the sense that what some of these directors and cinematographers are able to do with shadow in these movies and in this era is so visually interesting and even contributory in a storytelling way and a setting way. I mean, like you said, several of those movies there, it's almost like another character, you know, the lighting and the mood that brings. And it's so powerful here. I mean, that's a great place to start. But I just want to say I was super affected by this movie. I can imagine a lot of people saying it was a little melodramatic, and betraying my literary ignorance by admitting I've never read the book, but I felt this to be so affecting and so reflective of the period of the Great Depression, the New Deal, that I was really blown away and shaken by it. I feel like I understand not only Henry Fonda as a person, but the Fonda dynasty's progressive persona, because Jane is still out there, God bless her, almost 90, giving these firebrand speeches at various functions and stuff. And boy, her daddy does it really really well at the end of this movie with this kind of transcendental humanist speech that's tying together labor rights, but not in like a political way, just in a very human and universal way. Man, I thought it was beautiful. The mother character, her scenes where she's burning all the family's possessions before they leave. The poor grandpa who passes away on the journey and is just almost like a child, totally bewildered by what's unfolding. It was incredible to watch. And I have more thoughts about kind of how it fits into some of our wider themes, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts too on the themes.
One of my notes in this directly ties into what you just said is just, I take back everything bad I said about Henry Fonda in episode 11.
Right.
Like in Jezebel, this seemed like a different person entirely.
It's crazy.
Well, this
I
is a
also
role
have a
for
note
him.
about like,
Perfect role.
I think my note is fully bonkers how good Fonda's performance is here versus Jezebel.
Yes.
He really is incredible.
It just goes to show you casting is so important.
I can't help but think that this was very likely a very important role and movie for him. And there was a lot of himself in the role versus Jezebel. He was, not a great character to play. So this one totally sold me on Henry Fonda for sure.
I'm frankly shocked that a movie like this got made in this time period. I don't think without the context of World War II kicking off against fascism, like blatantly, you could have had a movie made like this. Like this is peak New Deal era cultural hegemony. And I know the book has a much darker ending, but I enjoyed the way they found the nice camp that was run by the government, where all these displaced farmers were able to re-find community and autonomy and defend themselves against, how transgressive was it that they had the police in California collaborating with the landowners to not just keep people whipped into shape and work, but to actively sabotage or attempt to a federal government program, which happens in the latter part of the movie. That's so transgressive for that time period and for such a young country psychologically to be able to be that self-critical. This made me look into Steinbeck a lot more, who's a complicated guy, but I think he always had that eye for the underclass. And I think the thing that I like about this movie almost more than most of the other ones we've seen is we've so often seen this period of flux and transition, the early 20th century, from the perspective of the upper class, right? Cavalcade being like the preeminent example of that. This is really at the bottom rung of the chain. And you're seeing that not even the traditional frontier American yeoman who went out there during the Cimarron early days and got his land, not even he is safe from the profit-driven mechanization that's going on. You just see the victimization that results from that. It's incredible. It's a really moving movie.
And really important to recognize the accuracies in the unfair and poor treatment that inspired the novel and were reflected in the movie too. Because I know prior to filming, the producer of this movie sent undercover investigators out to migrant camps because he thought Steinbeck was exaggerating about a lot of the conditions there, and then came back from that just being like, oh, he downplayed a lot of what goes on in many of these camps. So, it's not dramatized just to move people. It is very much like reflecting what so many people and families had to go through during this time period.
Yeah. And like to your point, Jake, about this being something that didn't seem possible to make, a couple years ago or with the looming threat of World War II is the other time we've seen a shantytown in film was in Skippy, I think.
Yeah, the Hooverville.
It looked fun.
Which is crazy to consider. That movie came out like 9 years ago at this point.
Right.
And the Great Depression was this huge affecting thing in the country at the time. And somehow we made, or at least nominated, no movies that actually actively featured that. And I think it's just a great reminder in terms of like, yes, we are learning about some of the cultural context through these movies as we watch them, but also there's an entire different thing that we're not going to see in the Oscars, or at least will not see until it is safe, or there's some other reason that we're seeing it, right? So it's always good to remember of like, we're seeing this cultural context, but it is literally 9 years behind in many cases, which is it's wild. It's always a good reminder of the Oscars are being run by the wealthy coastal elites.
Abby, I love the way you said man-made disaster, because I think almost the term Dust Bowl for the uninitiated, it's like, whoa, that sounds like a totally wholly natural disaster. But we see very much in here that the absentee landowners are coming in, using the police and telling these people that have lived as tenant sharecroppers on this land for generations that this whole project of your lives was not for you. It was extractive for us. And we've now found a way to do it on the cheaper. So you can leave. And there's a brutality to this movie that is at first jarring, but in the end, so beautiful. Because when Joe Carradine gives his speech before he is killed, and then, as I say, before Fonda gives his great speech, and then finally the mother capping it off. For the time period we're living in now, where it's so easy to feel hopeless in the weeks that we're living through today, to see people face that kind of adversity and still go on is actually like very affecting on a human level, I think.
Mm-hmm. I thought one thing you were going to say about the Dust Bowl too, where it just sounds like nature, is that was an ecological disaster that was also caused by people and poor farming practices, which were, you know, enforced by the people who later then were like, okay, families who are doing the work, get off the land, you know? So it's just, that double whammy of not only have we destroyed your livelihood, but we're going to destroy it even further by kicking you out of your homes and your land.
Should have been called the Agribusiness Bowl, because that's the fucking reason for it.
Yeah, I guess for anyone who doesn't know, it's that the Dust Bowl essentially is in these big agriculture businesses or like farms, is you were basically being forced to plant the same crops over and over because that was the thing that was going to make you the most money. And like subsistence farming is you had to make a certain amount of money to be able to keep your land. So you would plant the same crops instead of doing what is better for the soil, which is to rotate crops or to do like rest years for different fields so that the ground could recuperate from the stress of planting particular things. And because of that repeated kind of economically driven forced planting the same thing over and over again with no rest time, is it like ruined the soil and caused the topsoil to be incredibly loose and movable. So literally the Dust Bowl was just these huge windstorms basically that would pick up pounds and pounds and pounds of the topsoil and move it. Like there's pictures of, it looks like a sand dune has blown into people's houses and stuff like that. It just like absolutely stripped feet of the topsoil and ruined all of these farms.
Particularly frustrating being a medievalist, because these are all agricultural innovations that people knew about centuries and centuries before about how to avoid stuff like that happening.
People knew.
So
yeah. And like the topsoil is the part of the ground that grows stuff. Once you lose your topsoil, the stuff that is under it is fallow and barren. You can't just be like, oh, I lost 10 feet of dirt, I'm just going to plant in the 11th foot of dirt. Like you have to build that vitamin richness back up, and it just was non-existent.
Jeez.
Y'all thought you were listening to learn about movies. We're telling you a little bit about nature, farming, agriculture. Okay. We're going to learn you some today.
Yeah. Important tips for listeners. Don't just plant the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah. Rotate your crops.
Rotate your crops, everyone.
Title of the episode.
You know, I feel like that might actually be an apt title for this, is Rotate Your Crops.
Honestly,
anything else to say about of Mice and Men, of The Grapes of Wrath? Same author, different
same writer. I'm glad you made that. That's actually the last thing I could go on and on about this movie. I really did love it a lot, guys, but I'm glad you made that point, because in the same way, listeners will remember from last episode, I really loved Of Mice and Men. It's that same rooted in reality feeling throughout this movie. And I don't think it's melodramatic. I mean,
no, I think I guess it is melodrama in the sense of a lot of dramatic stuff happens, but there is a core root of reality. And I think especially like the performances and how it is shot that really grounds everything. And I would say that's true as well with Of Mice and Men. Just, I guess it's really, we can attribute it to Steinbeck probably, but there's a core seed of reality at the heart of both these stories that makes it feel like less like melodrama of, you know, Eastland falling blind off a cliff, equally tragic, I
East Lynn
guess.
catches so many strays. On
We will never let that movie rest.
Never. But yeah, I think that there's something in there that divorces this from being pure melodrama.
And I think part of it, because for me, the narrative structure of both of Mice and Men and The Grapes of Wrath are initially a little bit hard to get into because it's not really following your typical sort of anything that would be really dramatized and pulled into melodrama. You're really just getting a glimpse at what life is like in these very specific circumstances that are very important messages and important films. But it is that like very real. Through these messages, whether you're reading the books or watching the movies, you're getting a glimpse at really how terrible many of the things that you don't even think about in your day-to-day life are. But it's not something like I'm a fugitive from a chain gang where you're following.
It's more personalized.
Exactly, more personalized. So I think what makes it powerful also for some people might make it hard to get into initially. But if you go in
That's fair.
viewing it for what you're learning about that specific environment, then they are very impactful and very important movies.
Very poignant note to end on.
All right, so are we ready to talk about our next movie then?
So ready.
Oh, God.
All right. Our Town is a big slice of Americana apple pie in movie form. Based on the stage play by Thornton Wilder, the movie follows various residents of the small one-stoplight town of Grover's Corners. Namely, it trails after Emily and George, two neighboring childhood sweethearts who eventually marry, procreate, and then flirt with death. More saccharine than a pink Sweet and Low packet, Our Town plods along under the weight of its own self-satisfaction, flirts briefly with something meaningful in the last 10 minutes, and then ultimately collapses into a heap as vacant as Martha Scott's performance.
Damn.
Oh God.
Martha Scott got nominated, all right?
That's crazy.
I don't know.
The scene where she's getting married looks like she is fully disassociating. There is a...
I was disassociating watching this fucking horse shit.
I'm so thrilled to hear your opinion about this, Jake, because I'm sure you have opinions as someone who has done a bunch of theater, and I know this is a commonly played play. But like fully there's an element to this where I'm like, if this was 2 degrees more ironic, I would think that this was a horror story or like someone really needs to rescore this, but it's just so willfully like blinders fully on. It's wild.
Yes. So I normally like media that are sort of, you know, contemplative reminders about the transience of life and the universality of experience, appreciate the present and joy. But this felt so heavy-handed, sanitized version of life that it just made me so angry for the hour and a half. Angry and bored. Like my notes are at first, we'll go with some of the positives for this movie, I guess, though arguably positives. So noting that unsure, but it seems like the first time that we've seen a fictional movie that's centered around breaking the fourth wall. There was a lot of talking directly to the audience. Like that's how this movie was narrated. And we also had audible internal monologue that wasn't like a fever dream. We just straight up heard people's thoughts. So I say like it's doing something different, you know, but I also kind of hated those things. My other notes are this is saccharine turned up to 11. These people loved State Fair. I really hate this movie. I guess it's a better ghost story than Smiling Through the longest hour and 28 minutes of my life. So this,
Okay, you shouldn't have said that about Smiling Through, but everything else I agree with very strongly. And my first note for this movie was, what the fuck is this? Because I got like viscerally upset. Okay, like that scene when they're at that old timey white supremacy factory of like the soda diner scene. I don't know how fucking long that scene went on for, but I wanted to unalive myself midway through it because it was so fucking boring. This movie is Nanook of the North for boring ass white people. And again, in the long lineage of movies we've seen that program people wrong, this is right up there. I don't know if it was intended to be cheeky and like self-aware, but when Guy Kibbe, who I love up until now, is like teaching the one kid how to be like a bad husband, he's about to take his daughter on a date. I think he even makes a joke about like domestic violence. And it's all presented in this, like you say, uncanny, like, oh, isn't it just humble, you know, suburbia, America? Here's Joe, and he's friends with him. him, and it's gross. It's awful. I hate it. This movie made me upset.
To be fair, that Guy Kibbe scene he gives the worst marital advice ever, but then he is very much like, what I just told you is what not to do. So it's like, the audience can breathe a sigh of relief. But it is a town that is just middle-class white people. There's no poverty. There's no Great Depression.
Weird.
There's no minorities. There's no struggles for equality. Wives are happy being wives.
The only interesting person was the drunken music teacher who kills himself. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
I'll be honest,
I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
I barely remember that. Yeah.
There's the music teacher teaching all the wives, and it looks like his life sucks, and he has a couple funny one-off comments, and like later in the movie they're like, oh, they found him hanging in the cellar.
I
don't fucking blame him.
I gotta get out of this town. My actual very first note is, this narration feels like a wholesome Twilight Zone episode. And then at the end I was like, no, this was like a terrible Twilight Zone episode. Oh my God, this was so scary. It is, as Abby, you mentioned, it's based on a play. Apparently the ending of the play is that she is actually dead. Good. And I prefer that. Yeah.
It would have done her a favor. That whole thing of the gravestones are we supposed to understand that your soul is like trapped perpetually in the gravestone and you're all just saying inane shit to each other forever?
Yeah.
I was having like existential dread at that vision of the afterlife, because it's all these disembodied, transparent bodies like floating above their graves, like, I died on my prom night, and it's just like, this is awful. This is like hell. And it's
Our town fully breaking me.
I was like upset. I'm glad. It's probably good I watched this alone, but I had like a bad day after.
Yeah.
I'm mad. I'm mad still. I'm mad at this movie.
Yeah. What a waste. What a waste of time. Yeah. What a waste of energy.
The longest hour and a half of my life.
Truly.
You touched on it, but the only reason this movie is anything is it was fourth wall breaking. And everybody was like, you can do that? And they walked out of the theater and they talked about it for like a week. And that's the only reason why anybody has to remember this.
There is some cool like double exposure compositing when she's like a ghost walking through her own life at the end.
Yeah.
I think that last like 5 minutes of the afterlife, which to your point, Jake, yes, I believe is an absolute horror show. But there's a kernel of something interesting, maybe because it is an absolute horror show.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then she's not dead anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So
yes,
those stakes.
Exactly. Yeah, I wish if she were dead, I would appreciate that last sequence a little bit more, where she's just like regretting how much she didn't appreciate the things that she had. That's obviously a theme in a lot of things that can work. Just here, everything surrounding it was so gross and
but also then like
awful.
Okay, she didn't appreciate the things she had, but it's not like at any point her character has an opportunity to do or feel or think anything different. This is always going to happen to this particular girl. She's always going to marry her high school sweetheart, have a baby, and then die or not die. There's no opportunity that the story ever gives her to leave Grover's corners or feel like like her being not thankful is being mean to a boy who is kind of a dickhead. That's so stupid.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of something, Abby. So in the classic 90s movie, The Birdcage, which I've referenced to you guys before,
a perfect film.
Somebody is pretending to be conservative, uptight person at the end. And as part of their persona, they say, oh, I grew up in Grover's Corners. And I never knew what that was referencing. And now that I've seen this, I'm like,
so
oh my God. Like I say, this town is the Death Star white supremacy factory. I hate it. I hate this movie.
Yeah, this town definitely a sundown town.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
Ugh. Yeah. I'm ready to move on from this movie because it's just all negative.
I
it's
guess
making me mad.
My one thing too about this movie, in the sense of tying it back to our opening thesis statement, right, of like what the themes of these movies are. I think that this is the movie I was thinking of when I was saying like even the movies where that doesn't feature at all, like you can feel it like behind and like outside the range of your vision as you can feel these things like pressing down on this movie, and this movie willfully ignoring it.
Before we move on, I will say one positive thing that I thought was interesting.
It had an ending.
When they're doing the kind of scientific explanation of the breakdown of the town earlier on, which is, again, it's just weird framing, but they do a political breakdown and they mention 4% of the population is socialist. And I remember thinking when I saw that, I was like, That's actually interesting because it's a good reminder for that time period that might sound like a small figure, but that's like a good amount of people for a town. And in that time period, it was more mainstream to be a socialist, even in a town like this.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of neat. And I hope that that's coming back.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to move on from our town and talk about our next movie?
Hang on. I need to shudder a little bit. To just
like a full body, like
system. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So our next movie is All This and Heaven 2, which asks the bold question, what if Mary Poppins was nice and also you could flirt with the possibility of sleeping with her? Based on a novel, which is itself based on a true story, All This and Heaven 2 recalls the torrid would-be love affair between Henrietta, a governess, and her married employer, the Duc de Praslin. What would seem at first to be a bog-standard love triangle between a sweet young woman, a noble husband, and a reprehensibly jealous wife is complicated by murder. That's right. All this and a courtroom drama too.
So one of my notes on this is, you know how Jake sometimes after he goes on his explanations for why he likes something and guilts you for it is like, and now don't you all feel like assholes? That's pretty much what Betty Davis was doing for her whole class. Because they're all so mean to her and she's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you this crazy torrid story. Yeah, exactly. And then all the girls are crying at the end.
They were like her supplicants. That was a good power move.
Exactly. But then I was like, is she going to have to do this every year for her new incoming classes and stuff too?
Oh, absolutely. The first day is always like, oh, we got to hear Henrietta's
orientation day. You know.
Not to derail us too much. I don't know what other people want to talk about.
Unfortunately, I feel like I knew I was going to hate this movie when I saw the wife's performance because she's so overblown. And more importantly, like the score immediately like starts chomping the scenery with her. Like there's just at no point are you asked to think that this character is at all complicated, which sucks.
Right.
If she had some interiority beyond being just like a jealous, terrible, mean-hearted woman. Like there's more of a tragedy there, but instead the tragedy is that she basically didn't get murdered sooner.
Yeah.
I mean, really, she is such a fucking asshole. But more critically, this is the most wing-clipped I've ever seen Betty Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a snooze fest of a performance from an actress that we know is extremely capable and dynamic, and we'll see it at other points this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have strongly preferred that at the end, after she tells her story, she has like an evil little smirk and then she goes with her minister friend and she's like, they bought it. You know, the whole cover up for the murder. Then I'd be like, nice. Okay, give it more depth here. But I did. Apparently, this was based on a true story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was interesting.
That I didn't know at all until I was researching it, because to me, I was like, oh, this is kind of like Jane Eyre and I mean, Sound of Music, like those events haven't even happened yet, but those two had a baby, but then found out like, oh no, this actually happened where, you know, governess fell in love with the Duc de Praslin. What was his name? And then the wife got murdered and they were obviously implicated and stuff. So I was like, I had no idea.
He couldn't be charged as a peer of France. That's so funny. He could only be judged by his other nobles.
I know. I was like, okay. But I guess because of that, and Jake, I don't know if you know more about this just with your history brain and stuff, but when they said in the movie that it contributed to rioting and the French Revolution of 1848, I was like, is Jake mad about this revisionist history? And then when I found out that it was a real event and it might have actually contributed to political turmoil, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm wrong.
Well, the thing about, I won't go off on too much of a tangent, but 1848 was a very critical year in Europe, and it was engulfed in a number of different revolutionary attempts, usually around nationalism. But this was really seemed to be a catalyzing event in what was already a tinderbox in that society. So you have this injustice taking place. I think the public was looking at it like, here's this guy's going to get away scot-free, which is really not the way it's presented in the movie.
Right.
It's like this poor guy who couldn't be with the woman that he loved because of his asshole wife finally does the right thing and isn't tragic that they can't be together. It's very warped.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's told through Betty Davis's point of view. And as I said, the true ending is she's psychotic, actually.
Yeah,
she manipulated the whole thing. And then Abby, to your point, because you mentioned the score. So Max Steiner did the score for this, and he's done a bunch of scores for movies that we've seen. And I feel like very often they're good. He did Dark Victory. He works with Bette Davis and William Wyler a lot, but I think he's becoming too powerful. Where now his scores like are getting more and more complex, and they're starting to really overwhelm scenes instead of subtly adding to them. Right. So I went from like, man, Max Steiner, he's a name to watch, to like, oh my God, Max Steiner, this is going to be, the score is going to tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in the
Not to be controversial, but Hans Zimmer, is that you?
No, yeah. I feel like I had the same sort of trajectory with Hans
Dune.
Zimmer. Oh my God, the Dune soundtrack, so many of those scenes with the sudden like, would just like take me so out of it. But
sometimes it's cool, but then it's like, just shut up.
Well, y'all know the goss about Hans Zimmer, right?
No.
Dude, spill that tea.
So he doesn't actually compose on like most of the movies that he's credited on. He has like an entire team now, and a lot of allegedly Hans Zimmer movies are really just Hans Zimmer's, I don't want to say interns, because obviously they're like not interns, they're like trained musicians and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's under the name of Hans Zimmer, but it's basically like his team of people.
Like
so
Raphael Bonorati, famous.
I do think Dune, there are certain projects that he actually touches. So I think like Dune is maybe one of them. But yeah, there's a lot of music by Hans Zimmer, which is basically like music by Hans Zimmer TM.
He's like the producer at this point. Yeah. So. Interesting. Damn. I didn't know that.
I'm throwing my Zimmer portrait in the dumpster.
Your shrine to Hans is over.
Yeah. So I just want to circle back from that very interesting rabbit hole. I did like the kids a lot in this movie. I love the scene between Bette Davis and the oldest daughter talking about womanhood, becoming a woman. I love the middle child who shows up in another movie who is she's a great little child actress. She's a very peppy, cute kid. And then I like the randomly Louisiana son, Reynald. Like, Mademoiselle. I don't know if you guys caught this, but he had
illness.
Like a
his illness gave him an accent.
No, anytime they'd be all talking like wee, he'd be like, hey, mademoiselle, get over here.
It was the fever, Jake. The fever gave him that accent.
Okay, I just thought he was really out of left field, but it kind of worked for me in that it made
they
a
were all
boring
cute.
movie otherwise. Interesting. Yeah, I did like the kids, but I don't have that much else to say about this one.
Yeah. All right. Foreign Correspondent is a spy thriller directed by none other than Alfred Hitchcock, who we'll be seeing more of imminently. Foreign Correspondent takes place just prior to the outbreak of World War II, with crime reporter John Jones being sent to Europe to report on conditions abroad. Jones quickly finds himself in the middle of a scheme designed to delay the signing of a critical treaty that might successfully stave off war with Germany. As Jones slowly works through the web of lies and deceptions, Hitchcock all but turns to the camera to directly implore America to join the fight overseas.
I gotta tell you, I'm a big Hitchcock fan. This is one of my least favorite Hitchcock movies, personally.
I feel like
that's a high bar.
Yeah, I feel like I agree, Jake. It's kind of things that later he'll do better in North by Northwest. This to me feels like weirdly like proto Hitchcock. There's all these things that are going to appear in movies that he has later, and there's kind of that like eye for the camera. Obviously, there's still compositions that look really incredible, or like things that the
windmill sequence.
Yeah, windmill sequence looks amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and the tension in that scene too.
Or like the chase sequence through all the umbrellas and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
there's some amazing pictures in this movie. I will say the airplane sequence at the end, I was like not expecting that at all. Like that's a huge what the fuck is happening.
Felt epic.
Yeah. But it's kind of all these interesting ideas or concepts are kind of like narrative twists that will later, I feel like, get really refined, but they feel really like baggy and not quite connected in the way they need to be here.
So I liked this movie.
Interesting.
I haven't seen a ton of Hitchcock other than like The Birds, but for me, kind of divorcing it from my expectations of his, because I also know this is the first one we're seeing. This might be very early. I thought it had a surprising amount of humor and witty dialogue. Sure. And then all of the espionage elements and the plot twist for who's involved in what, I thought were decently well done, where there were certain like flags where you're like, okay, that guy's probably working with so-and-so. But my notes for when you find out that the dad dad is working directly with the shady spy who he saw in the windmill or whatever, I was like, oh, that's the mastermind, because he was there at the meeting and I was like, oh, but the dad doesn't know. The dad does know, in all caps. Because I didn't, for whatever reason, did not expect the dad to be like fully in on it. I thought he was like unwittingly part of it, but I was like, oh no, okay. He is orchestrating a lot of this because of his loyalties or whatever to his country of birth. Sure. And then, like you guys are saying, some of the cinematography and sequences, that scene where he's up on the hotel, the rooftop and stuff, like that was such a cool shot and setting that they used for that. So it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of funny. And the intrigue is also good to kind of follow. And then a lot of it looked good. Oh, and then speaking about the scene over the ocean, though, with the plane, also did not expect that. And I watched this movie when I was flying over the Pacific to Japan. Like, this is actually really stressful. I did not expect this at all. So didn't give 100% of attention to everything, but that was like a little overly long.
Maybe it's the edit. Because I agree with you. Yeah. And listening to you talk about it, there's so much good stuff in here. So maybe my problem is really just with the edit of the movie. Yeah,
the pacing didn't feel great, but I liked so many individual little parts of it that I still enjoyed it overall. And then I do want to touch on the ending, because obviously it was overtly a call to action for audience members. And apparently the original ending was not that.
Oh, interesting.
But by the time the movie finished filming, Alfred Hitchcock had gone to England, and that was right around the time that Germany started bombing London. And so the screenwriter was called back in to write that final scene at the London radio station, which was filmed literally 5 days before the bombing started. And
That's
so
wild.
How relevant that was at the time, all, they're listening in America sort of thing, was just like, dang, it feels kind of haunting to watch it decades later, knowing what all was going on. So I liked it.
It's fair. Ironically, I think part of my main issue with it really dovetails nicely with how that was affecting for you. And this might be hindsight is 2020, but it was so kind of fantastical and divorced from reality in terms of the actual reasons behind the conflict. And maybe this is pedantic, but I don't think it is, because there were some really serious things going on that caused World War II and caused fascism to rise. But it takes it down to this like very personalized, like silly back and forth revolving around this they meet and they're going to get married the next day, and the girl's totally infantilized. And I will say the actor who plays Mr. Fisher, the villain, I love as an actor really good, in this another movie. He has some kind of, it's a little bit of like a Ronald Colman thing in the sense of his delivery and persona is very kind of soothing and interesting. So that was a real standout. I did like the guy who played the British reporter, who was kind of their friend and helper. The characters were so lacking for me, and the nature of the story and the conspiracy was so kind of outlandish to me that it kind of took me out of it. But on its surface, the visuals, the sequences, very exciting, very cutting edge, very Hitchcock. I just wish they had remembered to put a compelling story in there too.
I agree that the characters weren't particularly compelling, and the mystery at the core of it was pretty divorced from like what was actually going on. But I don't think it was really meant to be a direct statement of World War II. It was kind of more just like, we're going to shoot this where there are elements of like wartime espionage and foreign correspondence, right? And reporters and everything like that. So it's relevant to today. And then because of those escalations, it became so additionally relevant.
Sure.
Are we supposed to feel sympathy for a Nazi spy at the end of the movie? I mean, again, I'm not to politicize it, but it was just weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's also just a good reminder that before people really knew all of the machinations and stuff of the Nazi party and what was actually going on interior, there was still kind of the understanding of like, oh, well, people have their own reasons for staying loyal to their country, right? Like that was Mr. Chip's best friend who died
that was
Germany.
World War I. Totally different context.
but still, what I'm saying is
the Nazis had been in power for almost a decade by this point, and
right.
But
in this movie, though, it's not necessarily like set in World War II. They don't say Hitler. They don't say Germany.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of lifting for this movie.
I'm just saying, like, I get what you're saying, but that was my understanding of it. It never really gives a direct setting, I don't think. It kind of felt like an Ernst Lubitsch fake world.
That's a good way to
that
put
they
it.
were looking at conflict in this fake world, but still very intentionally being like, doesn't this parallel current times? But current times are so much worse than what is going on in the Ernst Lubitsch Hitchcock version of this movie.
It felt like 3 12-year-olds on recess, like, we're like, let's write a spy movie. And like, this is what they came up with in 20 minutes during recess. That's what it felt like to me. Why would an 80-year-old senile Dutch man be the only one that has this war-stopping information in his brain? It was so weird. It was so weird.
Yeah.
I will say this movie was, in spite of all the problems I do think it has, I think it was also kind of a relief to finally watch a movie that was grappling with the concept of war is happening and we should do something about it, which is, we'll talk about more effective movies, I would say, working with that concept this year. But I think especially like last year or, the previous years, this has been going on for a while, and Hollywood has kind of been like shielding their face and being like, let's not talk about it for the most part, with the exception of something here or there. So having something that is looking directly at conflict and embroiling an American in that conflict felt like, it's like, oh, about time. So that was glad to see that.
I will say the sequence with the bodyguard at the top of the tower, excellent. Very Hitchcockian.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
That was great. That was a great sequence. There's some, like you said from the outset, there's some really great sequences in this. It just doesn't feel strung together in the way that his later movies do.
I'm looking forward to his later movies. And I do kind of feel like had they grounded it more in actual World War II, they could have said a lot more throughout the movie. But it was kind of early Hitchcock. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anything else to say about this?
Nope.
So our next movie is The Long Voyage Home, which is the second movie this year directed by John Ford with photography by Greg Toland. It follows the hard-drinking, carousing crew of the SS Glencairn, a steamer on its way home to England during World War II. The crew's reasonably high spirits are cut short when the Glencairn takes on explosives for cargo and is expected to creep back through German submarine lines to return to England. Suspicion and paranoia quickly builds aboard, but the inevitable explosion, whether it's from a German torpedo or the simple decimation of the community aboard the Glencairn, bides its time.
Boy, does it bide its time. I don't know.
Very apt title.
I love a boat story. I love a ghost boat story, which is essentially what this is, where all these men are trapped on this boat, quite literally, because they are time and time again refused shore leave. But I was reading that this is kind of like 3 short stories cobbled together, and boy, does it feel like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Yes.
Greg Toland,
Yes.
wonderful scenes too, with like a lot of silhouettes, fog, smoke. It all looks great. Kind of a modern Odyssey, right? Where these men essentially just keep getting waylaid from getting home. But I was very bored throughout all of it. And I don't know if y'all remember, but there was that one death scene of one of the guys on the crew. And it was felt like 20 minutes. It was probably like 5 minutes. So many other death scenes have been accused of like, man, they're really milking this. But I was just like, okay, let him go.
No Betty Davis.
He's no Betty
Dark
Davis
Victory.
or like Spencer Tracy in that Plane movie, it's just, man, yeah.
Movie. Disrespect. That's the ultimate menage a trois movie.
Yeah, where's my fan fiction? I've yet to see any.
Reminders to listeners, we are still accepting and will always be accepting fan fiction.
Threesome test pilot fan fiction.
Test pilot, yeah. Test pilot, throuple fan fiction. It's like, there's so much content there. Okay, fun fact though, because you mentioned it's, 4 one-act plays by actually Eugene O'Neill, who's very, very famous playwright. And he is Una Chaplin's great-grandpa, who is now gaining spotlight for being Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter. So she comes from a legacy on both sides.
Wow.
Jeez, I really got to see that Avatar movie. I just don't want to take 4 hours out of my life to go do it. That's another story.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't find out until pretty far into the movie that John Wayne was supposed to be Swedish in this movie.
I was going to make the same. I thought he, how do I put this? I thought he was a little bit impaired. And then when they reveal he's Swedish at the end, I was like, I wasn't too off. Just kidding. You can cut that if we have any Swedish listeners. I love your fish.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
This one really didn't do much for me.
Much like the last movie, it has the visuals and a lot of the bones of a good movie. It's missing something. I mean, there's nobody here that's carrying or shepherding me through this journey. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid to say that I need that, but there's no emotional core to it. It's very strange. It's like everyone's there. You feel sympathy for them. They go through turbulence, but like I didn't ever feel
I
compelled.
think it's this problem of like John Ford's really interested in telling stories about like communities and that kind of thing, right? Like we see it in The Grapes of Wrath, and I would say that's even the case with Stagecoach. But I feel like the problem with this is, despite the fact that we are kind of still in a Stagecoach situation in terms of like everyone being literally trapped inside a moving vehicle. In this case, it's a boat. We don't necessarily spend the same amount of time getting to know the people in it, or at the very least, I don't necessarily need every person on this boat to be an easily identified caricature like they are in Stagecoach, I would say. But the time is not spent with them for me to like know any of these people to the degree that is necessary to kind of like pull off this episodic odyssey. Good word for it, Sarah. I just don't care about any of these people.
I think part of it might be this is a little bit of a bygone cultural association, in the sense that I think if you're a very repressed man of that era, maybe this would be affecting for you. Like I did like the scene where there's a sober, older Irish guy on the boat talking to the British guy who's like in the throes of alcoholism. And some of the dialogue they have about that I thought was interesting and identifiable. But overall, I think that if you were like a poor, masculine-minded guy in this time period, maybe you would watch this and be like, this is just like me and the fellas. But it feels pretty bygone.
Yeah, I do think the smashing together of a bunch of one-act plays is really kind of hampering it.
Yeah, that's probably the more critical.
In that context of one-act plays, you just don't necessarily get that time to explore those ideas. Like you kind of really have to be like Johnny on the spot with whatever story you're telling, because you only have a limited amount of time. And the lack of depth, I think, stretched over across the length of a movie, which this isn't even particularly long. It's like 90 minutes.
Felt like it though.
It does feel long though. So it's that, I think it's there if you really want to go digging for it. Like you can find a depth to it, but it's not necessarily like on the screen in the way that I feel should be necessary to kind of like hold the structure together.
That makes sense when you say it's 3 different plays thrown together. That really does help to understand, because that whole sequence at the end with Ollie and everything, and they switch places. I was like, why are we starting another movie? Like, that's how I felt the whole time.
All right. Anything else to say about The Long Voyage Home?
No, not really. I'd rather devote time to the next movie.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
The meat and potatoes of this episode.
Yeah.
Rebecca better be good. That's all I'm saying. We're about to talk about The Great Dictator, and you should watch it and then come back and listen to us talk about it, because it'll be a better experience. So our next movie is The Great Dictator, which stars Charlie Chaplin playing the dual roles of Anadoid Henkel, a definitely not Hitler TM dictator obsessed with world domination and persecuting Jews, and Schultz, the amnesiac Jewish barber returning home after a long convalescence in a World War I military hospital, who is shocked to discover the political situation at home. In the guise of a slapstick comedy, Chaplin satirizes Nazism and decries fascist practices as both patently absurd and a dangerously violent threat, as Schultz stumbles his way through plotting the overflow of regimes, daring escapes, and a strange case of mistaken identity. This culminates in Schultz, posing as the titular dictator himself, appearing before the assembled military might of the regime to deliver a speech that not only cements Chaplin as a star capable of crossing the divide between the silent and talkie eras of film, but still rings true today as it demands cruelty and greed be laid aside in favor of fighting for kindness and equality. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, he says. The power they took from the people will return to the people, and so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
Ugh.
I'm getting teary-eyed now.
Ooh, got goosebumps. Got goosebumps.
I'm going to throw it at best satire ever.
Yeah.
I know that's a big claim to make, but I can't think of one that outdoes this. And it's famous for a reason.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
This movie, I honestly have few notes on because I was just so engaged in watching it. I had seen the speech before, it gets used in the, various, like, I think it even gets used in music a lot of the times, like scenes of that. And it's just a speech that unfortunately still feels relevant, always feels relevant because of this kind of like power dynamic structure that we have to exist in.
God,
and
does
it
it
just
ever.
so moving. But I didn't know how funny the rest of the movie was, and just like the satire. So many sequences had me just like cackling. The scene where they're both in the barber chairs and they just keep getting higher and higher because they're trying to outdo each other. Oh my God.
Him and Napolini.
So, with Napolini, and the other scene with Napolini where they go through all of this trouble to set up Hinkle's office to be like, oh, you are situated in a way that will put you in a powerful position, but everything goes wrong. He walks in through the wrong door. Like, so funny. And again, another one of those movies that the deeper appreciation of when this movie was made, actively satirizing a dictator who was wreaking havoc on so much of the world at this time. Like the courage and the timeliness of this. And especially this, similar to Foreign Correspondent, had a different ending initially, but they were still filming when France fell to Nazi Germany. And that's when Charlie Chaplin decided to have that big speech at the end instead, because it felt so important and necessary to really directly speak out and encourage, the world to stand up against these weak, insecure, fucking oppressive men. So yeah, just 11 out of 10, phenomenal movie. Enjoyed it
talking
from
about
start to
the
finish.
timeliness of this in terms of like this being made like literally as these things were happening. I've read that Charlie Chaplin is saying that if they had known how awful things were, because at the time that they didn't really know the extent to which how many people were being killed in concentration camps and stuff like that. Like they never would have dreamed of satirizing it in this way and making funny jokes about it. But I think that there is something to be said to the counterpoint of that. The reception of the movie, like Jewish communities at the time who are not used to seeing themselves on screen, much less being portrayed sympathetically, like this spoke to them, right? So it's that strange thing of like this movie is being made at a time where they don't know how awful it is. And so as a result, that they can kind of be a little bit more lighthearted with it. And there's importance to that. But at the same time, like even though we take it now as something looking back as being this really powerful piece, and it's like they, to a certain extent, they didn't know what they were doing at the time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree and had reflected on that a little bit too. And am glad that at the time that they didn't know the true extent, so we could get this movie, because I think it is important that it was made not only for that representation, a little bit more lighthearted, but also because I feel like one of the things that gets under like narcissists and fascist skin most is being belittled and made fun of, like you're not important. So having this come out at a time where Hitler was rising to power, and we know he loved movies, like we know he was very attuned to watching and knowing everything that had come up. Apparently,
Goebbels was apparently the Roger Ebert of his era by how many times he comments on the movies.
Commenting on the movies. And obviously they had Nazi propaganda filmmakers as well. Like Triumph of the Will is one of the big ones that Charlie Chaplin actually studied to get Hitler's mannerisms down. But apparently Chaplin sent the film to Hitler directly, and an eyewitness confirmed that Hitler saw it, even though Hitler's architect and friend denied that he ever watched it. I'm like, oh, he definitely watched it.
Oh, he did.
He 100% watched it for sure.
The really interesting thing about the two of them, they were born days apart. Hitler and Chaplin. A lot of people think of them almost as two sides of a coin, but I love the universality of his message in the end, in that it's very humanistic. He centers greed, which is so important at the heart of all this, the reason for fascism and everything like that. And like you say, to belittle these people that took themselves so seriously. I mean, we need that now more than ever.
Yep.
But on a more lighthearted note, these sequences in this are so funny. I have a whole new appreciation for physical comedy, and you can definitely see him straddling that world between silent film and this being his first
He's
talkie.
excellent in it. It's wild.
What a way to come
good.
out of the gate with a talkie with that speech. And
But even before that, the difference in how he's playing the two characters, obviously he studied documentaries and film of Hitler so he could get the mannerisms down. But like the way he plays Schultz and like how soft his voice is really excellent.
the scene with the globe, I have watched probably 10 times since I first watched this movie. I was laughing so hard. So Adenoid Hinkle, who's the stand-in for Hitler, his underling is like, you could dominate the world. And then Adenoid's like, overcome, like, oh, I could never. And then he like climbs up like an animal, climbs up this giant curtain and then descends in this almost like Fantasia, like ballet scene where he takes out this giant globe that he's been menacing over for weeks, and it turns out it's a very light, airy balloon, and he's just very like effeminately bouncing it on his head and on his ankle and on his butt on the desk. At one point, it is so funny, and it is such an antidote to what these people all throughout history always want to do to us. I mean, the unbridled joy you feel at watching that, it's the best antidote to all this shit that we still have to deal with. I love this movie so much. It's so funny.
Absolutely. Also, the scene where he strips all of the ridiculous number of medals off of his one advisor was so funny. Also, like he just kept going. Eventually, started taking the buttons too. It's so good.
Oh God!
So
When
good.
in the beginning, the whole beginning sequence, when you see Schultz as a soldier in what's supposed to be World War I, there's so much going on there with like when they're in the plane, and the plane flips upside down,
then they can't
and
tell
you
it's
see
upside down.
it like shifts over to like a little like puppet version, and he just is hanging. The sight gag of that from there on, and that's early in the movie. I was just dying from there on out.
Spectacular.
The great female Jewish character. I loved her character. She was strong. She was sticking up for her community. That was really empowering. The great comedy of when they're trying to figure out who's going to take the fall and try to assassinate the dictator. And they have whoever gets the coin in their pie. And they keep moving it around and they keep adding coins. And eventually he's got a punch in his mouth.
Except for the one guy who like organized the plan. And when he gets it, thinking he's the only one who got it, very magnanimously is like, well, gentlemen, I got it. Meanwhile, like Charlie Chaplin is jingling with all the coins that he had. Yeah, exactly. Oh, so good. So good.
Oh my gosh. The train with Napolini arriving.
Oh man.
Won't stop in the right place. And it's like, he's got to come out and look like a badass. And like, everything is so, I want to watch it again.
Yeah. Fantastic, phenomenal movie. I have some unfortunate Charlie Chaplin trivia, but it almost doesn't even feel right to mention, but I feel like in the same way that Errol Flynn had his treatment. You know, these men aren't perfect. Women. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to always like humanize people. It is
important. Exactly. So, well, first, he and Paulette Goddard during this time were married. So that's just like a fun fact. And they have very real chemistry, I feel like, in this, and were cute together. But found out through that Chaplin's first two wives were essentially young teenagers when they started their relationship. So his first wife was 16 when he was 29. And his second wife, Lita Gray, was 15 when he was 35, and they got married in Mexico to avoid scandal because she was pregnant, but they could get married in Mexico, so then it wasn't bad that she was pregnant anymore. So there's that history to his
men or dogs.
Oh yeah, men or dogs outside persona side. I don't want to dislike Charlie Chaplin, especially because of how important this film feels and how important he is to the medium in general. But it is a gross aspect of his life that I feel like we need to acknowledge, even though he is a great artist for sure.
Even his last wife that he had all those kids with, who Una Chaplin is descended from, she was like a teenager when he married. I don't know if that was the last girl you mentioned.
No, because Lita, I think that was Una O'Neill was his last wife. So I just stopped at the first two. And I was like, I've seen enough.
I didn't look at the first ones, but I saw the last one because I was tracking Una, and it was because he was in his 50s at that point. Yeah. And she was like a teenager.
So the age gaps just kept getting bigger.
Leo?
So,
is that cool. You?
That's cool. Yeah, literally, Leo.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. I mean, to my knowledge, Leo hasn't actually dated anyone literally underage.
Teenagers.
But
yeah, no. He just breaks up with them when they're like 23 or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, all right.
27.
Oh, 27. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's nearly 30.
I'm willing to bet, not to move away from Charlie Chaplin dating teenage girls too quickly, but I'm willing to bet that Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriends are breaking up with him and not the other way around.
Oh, yeah. They mature out of it.
Yeah, I think maybe they mature out of Leo.
Yeah.
Well, everybody wants to date Jack from Titanic until you see the real thing, I guess. But I think Mel Brooks, I feel like I totally understand his career now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The great Mel Brooks.
Especially in the beginning, there's a cartoonishness to everything where like the gun is this hilarious cartoon set piece looking thing. To your point, Jake, about flipping to the model of the plane where they're hanging out. Like that's also like blatantly cartoonish. On the one hand, it's like there are parts where it is pretending to be real life, right? But so much of the movie is not pretending to be real life and not even trying to convince you that it's real life. So I do think that the point where honestly, like the last speech is hard hitting and effective, even if you're just reading the text. Like it's a very moving monologue. But part of the thing that really makes it hit is how much it is a tonal turn away from like the cartoonish and the ridiculous into this thing that is like, no, this is actually important.
Yeah. I think that's why I was so surprised by the humor of the rest of it, because I had no idea there was that juxtaposition going in.
Agreed.
You touched on this, Abby, in your initial description, but one of the most effective things about it is by having this guy who has amnesia get birthed back into this world that is so different 20 years later, where fascism has become hegemonic, and his like inability to even grasp the basic logic of that feels so validating as a viewer, and is almost just as cutting as all like the portrayals of the dictators. It's that thing of like, in a vacuum, when you actually look at this, it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, it's so ridiculous. And Chaplin does that.
I didn't even really think about or appreciate that element of it, but it is also true just in terms of like the boiling frog effect of things just gradually getting worse over time. Is that if you were in a coma in 1995 or 2005 even, and then woke up in 2025, it would be like, what?
What did we do wrong?
So bizarre. Yeah.
I love this. This was such a great fun movie.
It's so good.
I know I'm going to watch it again.
It's one of those things, it's like there are so many elements of it that are honestly hard to talk about in a recording audio only medium, because so much of it is like physical comedy slapstick stuff. But I know we usually wait until the end of the podcast to be like, go watch this one, but like go watch this one. It's really good. All right. So we're ready to move on to our next movie.
Yeah.
All right. So The Letter is a proto-film noir melodrama directed by our best friend William Wyler, which stars Betty. Oh, God, every time.
You got this. I believe in you.
And stars Betty Davis as Leslie Crosby, who appears to commit a stone-cold murder in the first minute of the movie. Leslie, the wife of a British plantation manager in Singapore, is soon revealed to have been acting in self-defense, allegedly. The murdered man in question, an old friend, was aiming to assault her, she explains. This story and her legal defense is quickly complicated, however, when a letter revealing that she'd asked him to come over comes to light. Steeped in racism, both narratively intentional and otherwise, because yes, we have yet another European woman in yellowface in this movie. The Letter explores and exploits the power of appearances and reputation as it serves up a cold dish of guilt and revenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, William Wyler does it again. I doubted him after Wuthering Heights. I was a little bit like, okay, that was boring. That was kind of a drag. I loved this movie. I really liked it a lot. And I think that him and Betty Davis, there's a reason they have such an effective partnership over the years. And it's really epitomized in this film. And so if you guys want to come at it, come at it. I'm happy to defend it. But I was guessing the whole time, did she do it? Did she not do it? Her performance is so good, especially early on, that you really can't tell. You kind of root for her, but then as more comes out, and then when she has that really brutal reveal of her not loving her husband, it's cold, it's powerful. But I really enjoyed this. I'm curious to see what you guys thought of it.
I don't know. I don't know how I felt about it. I think I was kind of lukewarm about it overall at the end, and it kind of made me walk away from it worried that what if I don't end up liking a lot of noir type movies in the same way that I don't like a lot of Westerns? Because I think there's a similarity in,
absolutely.
There's so much beneath the surface, but there's kind of like an emptiness in what you're seeing, which I can see it as compelling, but it makes it hard for me to fully get into it. So now I'm a little bit worried for the next, decade or so of movies that we're going to be watching.
It got me jacked up for noir because I'm like, oh, this looks awesome.
I've got bad news, Sarah.
I know. I'm like, no, please let this be a one-off that just didn't work for some reason. I did love that ending sequence though, where Bette Davis, like, she has the opportunity to placate her husband and save her own hide and her own life, and then just comes out with the truth anyway. But my final note on this though is that, like, welp, the Hays Code strikes again, because I do think a lot of her demise is because the production code wouldn't let her get away with adultery and murder. And I did find out the ending is different from the original play, so I feel like that kind of matches my assumptions for them.
She's a bad person.
I know, but I think she gets away with it in the end in the original play.
Interesting.
And she doesn't in the movie. And if she had gotten away with it, I think, once again, I would have liked it a little bit more.
I like when she gets killed. I like it, the revenge of the admittedly yellow face other woman.
Of Gail Sondergaard, our favorite Anthony Adverse villain.
I think this movie is a solid 3.5 stars, but I also like it. It's to me, the huge shame of this movie is that it's got the wife of the murdered man, the Singaporean woman who gets her just revenge, is in yellowface, because this movie would have fucking ripped if that was actually someone who should have been cast in that role, because then it becomes the I can't get justice in a socially acceptable way, because there's no way for me to get this given who killed my husband. But
I would have loved that.
That would have ruled
better.
I think if that had been there, this movie would have whipped ass, would have been top 10 movies that we've watched, etc. There's that idea still in there, but the fact that they cast it wrong instead kind of turns it into this weird, frankly, more stereotyped and racist way than it wouldn't be. It wouldn't read that way if they had cast it appropriately, or at least it wouldn't to a modern audience. I can only speak for a person living in 2026 now. Right. But I do think that the way that the main character, Bette Davis's character, the world kind of starts to close in around her is really lovely and effective.
Great characterization, her big glasses.
Yeah.
She has certain tells. And I wonder if that was her or Weiler inserting them, because you're along for the roller coaster.
Yeah. And I think just the environment, how the world slowly collapses around her until this is kind of the only thing that she can even think about. She can't even enjoy the fact that she got away with it from a legal standpoint. She can't enjoy the fact that she frankly has a clean getaway because her husband's talking about taking them to some other plantation. It's just this one act, this thing that she tried to deny instead is the thing that has defines her life and ultimately kills her. Yeah. There's so much in there that is so cool. And unfortunately, Sarah, I'm a huge fan of noir. And there's something about it's that vacuous emptiness of basically the soul rot of it all, which I love in this movie.
Yeah.
It's here in spades.
Right. I was going to say, I think I agree with that, we'll call it slow suffocation of the truth kind of closing in on her. I think one of the things that just made it really hard for me to get into the movie was not only the miscasting of Gail Sondergaard, was that her character mostly just kind of stared judgingly.
Sure.
I just think that, I don't know, she felt caricature-ish and not silly, but a little silly, which took me out.
I can see where you're coming from. I do think to a certain extent it kind of works in this because of the fact that Bette Davis's character is revealed to be a racist, and because of the fact that it's so much from her point of view, especially the back half of the movie of once we know what she's done, it becomes her movie, versus before we know what she's done, it's kind of the people around her are trying to figure it out. But once we get that,
that's true.
That's really when we're seeing the most of the wife character. And Bette Davis's character is so resistant to the concept of seeing this woman as a person, as anything other than a threat, that I feel that would still work work for me to a certain extent, even with different casting.
Sure.
It just goes to show how doing the cowardly thing in terms of casting or like not showing actual people of color on screen is ultimately undercutting the strength of your movie.
Every time.
Every single time. It is doing a disservice to the story that you're trying to tell.
And the one time they did it was for fucking Gone with the Wind. It's like they had to make everything else racist to have a good main black character.
Yeah, I guess the real takeaway here is casting people of color does not necessarily not make your movie insanely racist.
Right.
However, it
adds layers.
Yeah, it's going to add layers to it, right?
I did love the movie with Big Eyes, where with her black
Claudette
friend,
Colbert.
and they started a business.
I was thinking about that the other day too. That I'd kind of forgotten that movie, Imitation of Life, where they touch on some of those themes pretty early on. They still have like caricatures, particularly their friend and stuff. But you compare that to Gone with the Wind, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I totally agree with you guys that you kind of have to set aside the Sondergaard element, and it's there and it's ugly and it really detracts. But the whole rest of the movie, I thought it was another great example of Weiler's tight filmmaking. There's not a wasted instant, and the drama is there throughout. Everything's put to good use. He's so good at that. And Betty is at her best when she's misbehaving. That is when Betty is at her best.
Yeah, great performances from Betty Davis and James Stevenson, who played the attorney. I did realize one other thing, though, that might have impacted my overall experience watching the movie is I watched it on YouTube. I rented it so it would be in like good quality and stuff. And the still image literally is Betty Davis. And the quote on the image is, "With all my heart, I still love the man I killed." So it kind of like gave that away to some degree. Yeah. So I'm just realizing that probably also had a lot of just like, well, the tension wasn't there the whole time.
That's the whole thing.
So yeah, fucking thanks, YouTube. Forgot that part.
Because even when you find out they were having an affair, you're still like, oh, well, maybe she was trying to cover it up. It got out of hand. It's like, no, she was like pathologically could not let this guy go.
Right. Yeah.
And it destroyed everyone involved.
I'm going to write them a complaint.
Since we've shouted out James Stevenson, who's playing like her lawyer. He's excellent. And it is tragic because he passed away shortly after this movie, like died of a heart attack the following year. Yeah. He's so
This was like his first big movie. And then he died right away.
Spectacular. There's a point where I was like, man, look at this sexy fox, in the sense of like, he literally looks like a fox.
He's very suave. Yeah.
He has that like lupine kind of like features. Incredible.
But also, Mr. Fisher from the Foreign Correspondent is back too as the husband. He gives a heartbreaking performance.
Yeah, where he just wants to believe the best in his perfect wife, as he said.
I mean, they infantilize her and everything, but it is heartbreaking. He was so devoted, and it was like when they needed money to buy the letter, he didn't question it. He didn't ask the lawyer to explain more. He was just, I love my wife.
On that note, because of course I had to do the like conversion to today's dollars, the $10,000 that they paid for the letter is about $230,000 today. So putting that in perspective, that's how much he trusted his wife. He's like, whatever you needed to do. That's
nice to avoid the noose.
Yeah, absolutely wild. So.
I really like this one a lot. I'm jazzed for Maltese Falcon now.
I'm like, are there movies by Weiler that we're not going to watch for the podcast that I have to? Like, surely, I'm sure there's.
I know we got to watch like all of his stuff.
I'm like,
yeah,
I do. I've yet to see a Weiler movie where I'm like Wuthering Heights is. I don't necessarily care for the story context, even though I
still really liked it.
I still enjoyed watching it. So I'm like, he just has a great sense of like how to work the camera and like blocking, like all of the set blocking for like where actors are standing and stuff like that is always really excellent. And and just great performances. Because speaking back to James Stevenson, apparently he had a lot of difficulty initially working with William Wyler because of his style, as we said, where he just keeps doing takes and takes and takes and takes without a lot of direction. And so I guess at certain points he would leave set pretty upset, and Betty Davis would consistently go to him and be like, look, don't leave. I know it's tough, but it will be worth it. You will give the best performance of your career under Weiler's direction. And this was his, he got nominated for Best Supporting for it, and the performance was excellent. So gotta watch all of them. All right. Anything else to say about The Letter?
Let's go for a complete tonal shift now.
All right. So our next movie is The Philadelphia Story, which stars Katharine Hepburn as a wealthy socialite preparing for her second marriage. If only her ex, played by Cary Grant, and the tabloid magazine journalist played by James Stewart, here to cover the drama, would get out of her way. Fast-talking comedy hijinks ensue as Catherine's Tracy struggles to get down off her pedestal to be recognized and loved for her humanity. While the plot is relatively straightforward and the breakneck pace might initially disguise it, like Tracy, this movie too has hidden depths. While these are people decidedly removed from the broader conflicts of the world like poverty or politics, the Philadelphia Story has no interest in the geopolitical period in which it exists. Its cast is at least uniformly complicated and imperfect.
I'm playing my cards closer to my hand this time.
I have one prominent note in my notes for this movie, which is, do we think Cary Grant and James Stewart explored each other's bodies?
100%. 100%.
Well, I knew that about Cary Grant. I never heard that about Jimmy Stewart, but that'd be
Listeners,
funny.
We have another request for another throuple fanfic for the podcast for the Philadelphia Story.
A quadrilingual? I don't know, because
that's right. Her original.
Yeah.
Or the guy she's engaged to.
No, the photographer girl.
Oh, yeah.
She was cool.
Yeah.
She's so funny.
Really liked Jimmy, or his character.
Embry. Yeah,
Liz
Embry.
is the character's name.
Liz Embry.
Embry.
She's so funny. I love her. So I want all four of them to like go vacationing together, please.
Yes. Yeah. Official request. Again, you can send that email to lightscameraaccolade@gmail.com whenever you write the fanfic. I really loved the chemistry between all of the main cast. I think Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, James Stewart were all very funny and played off each other really well. I don't know how much I enjoyed kind of like the scenarios overall in terms of the actual meat and potatoes of I think it was based on a play initially. Oh, it was, because Katharine Hepburn, like, it was written specifically for her, and I think it ran for like 400.
Vehicle.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because I think you had mentioned a few episodes ago, Jake, that she had been labeled already at this point as like box office poison. So this was meant to bring her back into like the good graces of American perception of her in Hollywood. So yeah, loved them. I loved Jimmy Stewart in this, really coming to like him, and found out there's a biopic about him coming out this year. So might go and watch that. But I don't know, I'm kind of looking at my notes and there's not a lot substantial here. The Year of Ugly Hats continue. Katharine Hepburn had some really terrible hats in this.
That when they're coming out of the library, she looked like a fucking Keebler elf.
Is this? Yeah. I did like that. It was interesting to see that some slang has like come back into use almost 80 years or whatever later. Katharine Hepburn at one point said, "I'm cooked," in terms of like just being, ruined, and then also said no dice for something else. So, but hearing her say, "I'm cooked."
Cary Grant, the vibes are off.
So funny. Yeah, the vibes are off. Katharine Hepburn in the Philadelphia Story.
Brushing them aside. 6'7".
6'7". 6'7". It's fine. I do think one of the, because I'd forgotten about this because I was just focusing on the humor, but the fact that Katharine Hepburn's like distant father in this blames her for him sleeping around and leaving the family. I was like,
was the most
what?
Hays Code shit I have ever seen in any movie so far.
Yeah, he's like, well, of course I'm with the secretary because you guys don't appreciate and love me enough. I was like, what the? You're not a good enough daughter.
He uses the phrase, she's too high-spirited.
Oh my God.
Causing him to cheat on his wife.
Jeez.
Like, what the fuck kind of deranged fucking shit is that?
Yeah, I was shocked. Yeah. Oh, rolling back. So we talked about the Best Actor nomination earlier and who we think it should have gone to, but Jimmy Stewart won for this movie, which doesn't, to me, really feel particularly deserved. But what the common consensus and what he even said himself was that it seemed like this was actually just deferred for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington of last year. And like he didn't feel like he deserved it for this. And I think there were other better performances.
Like he is terrific and fun in this movie. But
yeah, but there were some important performances.
Annoying as fuck.
Really?
Oh no, I loved him in this.
Yeah. No, I hated him. When he was drunk, he was so fucking annoying, and I just, I played him before, and his voice, it's like in certain contexts, I like it if it comes off kind of silly, but it was so grating in this to me. And I'll be honest, I didn't like this movie in general. I don't like this genre or type of movie of the divorce and they get back together and then it's hijinks in between. It's like comedy. It was that other, I'm confused because I really like Cary Grant from later movies. I like him a lot. And it seems like he made his bones with these silly, weird divorce movies. I don't know. The whole thing, she's out swimming, getting drunk with Jimmy Stewart the night before her wedding. I didn't agree with it. I got upset.
Yeah.
I thought it was all too bohemian for me. Just the way everybody acts. It was, marriage is a pact and love is real, and all these people, they're rich and they don't appreciate each other and really care for each other, and it's one day you feel one way, the next day you feel the next. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't like this type of movie.
Well,
and it was the same issue I had with the other one.
I think that no, I think to your point, Jake, in terms of like these people are all rich and they don't really love each other and that kind of thing. Yeah. I think you're correct in identifying that. And I also think that there is a part of this movie that is really acknowledging and trying to grapple with that, because that's essentially Tracy's entire thing is the reason that she and Cary Grant broke up originally is because of this feeling like she was making herself untouchable and not a human being in that relationship. And then the reason it doesn't work out with Jimmy Stewart's character is because he thinks of her as kind of like a queen or a goddess, right? He talks about her as being a queen, but also being like very human. And that's the thing that kind of like gets to her in that moment of being seen as a flesh and blood person. Yeah. Like obviously that doesn't work out for a myriad of reasons, but that desire to be like recognized as a person and love for it is at the heart of this movie. I do think that all the stuff with blind, removed rich peopleness of it all is absolutely a factor in this, but I think that that is the complicating core of this movie, that a lot of these movies that we've watched in terms of weird divorce movies, because boy, there've been a lot of them, are kind of like missing that aspect of something other than the hijinks.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I liked this more than The Awful Truth, which was the other Cary Grant divorce movie slapstick.
Yeah, I liked it more than that one.
But but it also, didn't come away with like strong feelings about it or anything.
Yeah, I will also say I've seen this movie once before. And when I originally watched it, I was like, man, it's fine. Versus kind of a second watch is I could actually take some time and appreciate the script, which I do think it's really well scripted. And also kind of like, we've talked about this before, but the benefit of like seeing it in context, right? Kind of really can change your perception of a movie. So like being able to really enjoy the script this time and just delight in these performances of actors that I've seen a lot of now absolutely has like changed my perception of the movie.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't. So that's interesting, your perspective. And I know they say this explicitly now that I'm thinking back about her unsatisfaction with either being treated like a goddess or shutting herself off
just
or
dehumanizing
whatever.
her,
I don't know. I just couldn't see. Like, I was just like, the fiance should have kicked Jimmy Stewart's ass. I didn't understand why.
Yeah, I think it's also
like,
that weird thing of like, he's clearly kind of with her because of the social cachet he gets from marrying the socialite. So it's like, it's a different kind of pedestal.
Yeah, I don't
like, that
have
he's put her
interest
up on.
in people like that. They're gross.
I think at the core of the movie, Cary Grant's character, I forgot his name in this, DK something. I don't know.
CK Dexter.
There you go.
That's a good name.
He was the only one who actually knew her and saw her as a person. And there's just that element, right, of stubbornness and stuff, which you also see in a bunch of other divorce hijinks, like even in Awful Truth, except that's just between the two learning to like reappreciate each other or whatever. But that was like her current fiance was just utilizing her for social status to some degree, and also spoke very directly about, you're just like this untouchable marble statue, and Jimmy Stewart did the same sort of thing in a more romantic way. So her ex-husband was the only one who could actually like see her for her.
It was like, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, he's like, you're a piece of shit, and I like that about you.
Okay.
I will also say, I do appreciate the fact that part of the reason that they divorced is Cary Grant was a drunkard when they were married.
Like a valid reason.
It's a very valid reason. And also it makes explicit that he has essentially quit drinking to that extent.
He tapered it. He does have a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. But like he tapered it down.
Which is
so
meaningful.
It's like, he had to make a change within himself before they could get back together. And a lot of these movies we've seen, it's like the woman going through some kind of internal arc and the dude just standing over there being like checking his watch, waiting for her to finish her emotional journey so that they can get back together. So I do appreciate the fact that, I mean, it happens off screen before the movie, but they do make him do some work to actually like get back into this relationship, right?
I will never probably remember this movie again, but I'm glad there was some enjoyment from you guys.
I love to know this. It's very good. All right. Anything else to say about the Philadelphia
on that
story?
Note, we got one more to roll
One
into.
more to get through here. All right. Kitty Foyle stars Ginger Rogers in a dramatic role as the titular Kitty, a New York saleswoman who finds herself with a dilemma. Marry her fiancé, a poor doctor, or run away to be the mistress of Wynn, the rich man she loved years ago. Told through a series of flashbacks, the rise and fall of Kitty's relationship with Wynn and the class tensions between them is explored over the course of their relationship. Kitty ultimately decides that Wynn doesn't have what it takes to buck his family's expectations and live in poverty with her, and the two separate until the present day when Wynn has walked back into her life. Kitty Foyle poses its protagonist and the audience with a daring question. Is it worse to be a sullied woman, the mistress to a passionate man who will nonetheless never make you an honest woman, or to be a woman with a job?
I love Ginger Rogers. I just want to start by saying that. It was nice to see her in a dramatic role, and she had some wonderful facial expressions from when she was like kind of annoyed and catty to when she was like really delighted, usually when like seeing Wynn come back into the picture. But I did deeply dislike this movie.
I hate this movie.
Yeah.
Really?
It was, right from the like subtitle of Natural History of a Woman had me a little bit suspicious already, but I was like, okay, we'll give it a try. But all of the initial setting that it gives up for like the mom and everything was like, oh, she had this family and everything was happy, but it wasn't enough. She had to go to work. And then when Ginger's like holding the baby in that early scene, there's a quote about like, oh, how right you look with a baby in your arms. And she's like, how right I feel. So I was just like, Hays Code, stop. Like, you are being so heavy handed with all of this stuff. And so much of the timeline was just like how she eventually learns that all of the decisions that she's having as like an independent woman are actually bad. Like, I don't know. It's Hays Code telling you that this is what women want, and it's not men, it's babies, and like you should have a stable life so that you can have babies. Yes, oh so my Lord. And so my final note on this though was like the movie San Francisco, but I don't know if you remember the grandma in that, where she was like, I had a tempestuous hot romance before when I was young, but I wised up and married the rich banker. And I'm like, this is her life story. This is essentially the story telling you that Hays Code says to just settle with stability so that you can have kids and be happy, because that's what you want. So I just over more and more of the movie just really, really disliked this movie pretty strongly.
The opening sequence of this movie, it's kind of like a pastiche on like silent era films where it's like a woman who is having a romance with the guy, like being wooed. They get married. He brings her home a little bit of money that she sets aside. And then it's like, but then she decides that she wants a vote and she'll never go back to that simple life of only having money based on the allowance she's given by her husband. It's just not...
I thought that was all self-aware and like tongue-in-cheek because of the way she delivers it. Because I feel she has great agency throughout this movie. I actually felt that this was really a powerful example of a woman seizing autonomy and making choices in her life. And granted, a lot of those choices are dominated by conflicting romantic feelings. But here's a woman who is, when her father passes, she strikes out on her own. She regularly goes into new environments, is very capable, professionally and personally, not afraid to talk to men on equal terms repeatedly. What you guys are saying is right. I took that to be they were satirizing a lot of that traditional.
Sure. But to me, it felt like this is the Hays Code pretending to be a feminist movie. because I think it's presented very much like that. And you can see it in different scenes too, like when the dad is talking to her and he's like, wind's not good for you, you know, and she's like, well, a woman can tell when like a man's going to propose. And it's very much treated like she's strong, trust women's intuition, but she is wrong and the dad is right. Like there's this constant assertion of like,
well, she was a kid at that point. She was like a teenager.
No, she was in her 20s.
But she's not a real person. She's a character being written and put into scenes for the movie. So like,
but when you're a young kid, you are stupid. Like she wanted to be with a rich kid that could never be with her in the long term. Your parents tell you what to do when you're a kid. Because you're stupid.
Sure, but that's kind of what I'm saying is that she is treated as essentially her dad knows better. Society knows better. That's at least what I felt very strongly through the movie.
I thought she bucked that consistently. When she gives that speech to the high class family and lets fly their hypocrisy and their
a great
snobbishness, like that's just one example of her at every instance. And it's not as though having a baby was her end all be all. I mean, she loses the baby and she goes back anyway. She moves on and she's still making decisions about whether or not to get with Wynn or not. So it's almost like an afterthought. I mean, it's an inescapable element of the thought process that goes into a relationship, particularly at that time. But I thought it was, I didn't like the doctor guy. I thought he was a chump and like, you know, kind of a loser. And they try to insinuate, oh, he does doctor work for poor people, so he's a good guy actually. But I don't know, he just was kind of boring. But anyway, her not choosing Wynn was an assertion of her self-actualization and like, I'm not just going to be disrespected in perpetuity. You know, I'm Kitty fucking Foyle.
That's why I said it's kind of like Hays Code disguised as feminism, because again, that is what is so telling about that line of like, this is what women want. It isn't men. It's the future. It again, just being like, the men aren't important in their life. It's the children. But what it's telling you is the children are what is most important to women. That might be true for Kitty Foyle, but it says that is what women want, right? Like it is a broad statement about what makes women happy. And we still see so much of that. Like if she went with neither of them, if she went with neither of them and forged her own path, I would have felt better about the movie where it's like, no, you don't have to choose between your crazy romance, whatever, and like the safe doctor who's been just waiting on the sidelines. Like you are your own person and you can move forward and grow past like this period in your life. I think that would have been a better movie that doesn't feel quite as much as like, no, she has to choose someone because she's got to get on, you know, her true path in life, which at this point is stability and probably a family.
Yeah. That definitely would have been more interesting.
I think to your point, Jake, there are points in this where she exerts agency, right? But it's kind of the ways that she exerts it as a character are all things that for the past 10 years or whatever, we've been seeing movies say this is the right way to exert agency, is like to tell rich people that they suck for denigrating poor people, or to tell people getting in the way of your relationship that you really love this person or whatever. So it's like all of these things that she does that are really rebellious are actually like secretly things that we've kind of been cheering people on in movies to do for a long time. And then at the end of the day, like she's, sure, they're good things, but like it's the safe version of like what a strong, empowered woman TM looks like. And then at the end of the day, she's still just like, I have to make a choice between these two men.
Let's be honest though, in the context of that time period, to try to make your way in life just single after a certain age is not an easy life to have. So like these are real discussions that women in that time period, and they have them kind of at different points in movies we've watched about compromising in that way, because the reality, this is like a time where a lot of women couldn't have financial independence, and that's changing with the war and their entry to the workforce. And I feel like this movie partially reflects some of that. But I would say maybe we're being, I feel like an asshole because I'm a man, but like, is it setting too high an expectation to say, oh, well, she should just, like, this isn't Ernst Lubitsch where we can say the two chicks are going to get together at the end and that would be believable in the context of that world and that story, which I think it maybe would have been. This is a movie that I feel takes more place in reality. And I believe that decision that she made. Would it have been cooler if she said, fuck both these guys and went it alone? Yeah, but that would have been a pretty hard fucking life in 1940.
I do think my thing with that is if that's the story the movie wants to tell, it doesn't bother to tell it. Like if that's the insightful point it wants to make of like, actually both these dudes fucking suck and we have to be grappling with like, this is the real choice that women are making and it's hard and it is not fair to women. Like it doesn't, that's not how this is framed at all, I guess. So it's not like, even if that is the reality of like, she would be forced to be making this decision, the movie is not interested in how like that undercuts a woman's agency or like how that like is denigrating to women. It doesn't grapple with that at all. So even if that is the reality of the situation, like the movie's not actually interested particularly in telling that story. It's instead offering like this sympathy of, well, you have the future of yourself and also your children to look forward to. Instead
Did they
of being
explicitly
like,
say that it's children?
yes, there's specifically a line that says women don't want men, they want babies. That's explicitly a line in the movie.
But she says that in narration, like women don't want men, they want babies, right? That's her. It's
no.
self-aware.
That is when she is pregnant and she is like before she's about to have her terrible miscarriage. That is like,
but
brutalizes
that's her fatal. That's her fatalistic looking back. And I'm not trying to just defend this movie just to defend it.
No, that's her talking to the like secretary friend when she finds out she's pregnant. I'm pretty sure, like I'd have to go back and watch, but I'm pretty sure that's the conversation that they have.
Look at it too.
And even if it is part of the narration, that quote isn't tongue in cheek. You know, it is very much a like serious turn for her and a true joy, which also echoes back when she was holding the very, as Abby would say, very fresh baby earlier in the movie. Who, you know, the doctor is like, oh, you look good with the baby. And she's like, it feels right. You know, like it is very, very much echoing those same
I think
sorts of
all those
sentiments
went
throughout.
over my head because I'm a man. Sorry.
It's definitely possible. I think what I would say is this is like a much, much, much less egregious version of things that we've seen for like minority characters and especially Black characters in Gone with the Wind or other movies where it's like they can be good characters, but they are very intentionally made to fit within a view of what is actually palatable to a white and largely white male audience, right? It's teaching you how to be palatable for their vision of society. And I think that's kind of what they're doing for Kitty Foyle in this movie as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I just got wrecked. I thought that we were all going to come in and be like, wow, this is a great example of like Rosie the Riveter put to film in this time period. It's so apropos. All that shit went totally over my head. Mea culpa. If you guys are both agreeing, you know, I got to watch this again for sure.
I think probably for many people at the time, there were those elements of like standing up for yourself and stuff that were meaningful to audiences at the time. But I think that's also what makes a lot of the undercurrent of, but women should all want to have families really insidious. And I think that was the same. We talked about this in the last episode with like the NAACP's criticism of Gone with the Wind is that with Birth of a Nation, that's obvious, right? That's obvious racism. And it's obvious like how terrible and off-putting that is versus with Gone with the Wind. It's such a more subtle, insidious thing that it's dangerous in a completely different way, where now you're creating a narrative that will have a similarly negative impact, but it's cloaked in this kind of guise of, no, this is good. This is like a good thing, good representation. And it's like, no, it's really not.
Wow.
You know what is one positive thing that came away from Kitty Foyle?
It wasn't her hats, because goddamn, she has some ugly hats in this movie.
It is a piece of fashion, though. It is a piece of fashion from this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, the Kitty Foyle.
Yeah, the Kitty Foyle dress, which is like infamous, it's the square busted dress that had the gathered like shirt under it. That really exploded, and part of the reason is because it was really easy to take like a men's shirt or like something secondhand and gather it down and like repurpose that into that. So at the time when lots of women were, you know, it was hard to get a new dress because clothes were expensive and we didn't have fast fashion and all that stuff. But like it became a hugely popular item because it was easy to kind of like reproduce or make out of stuff that you might already have.
That's pretty cool. I just have to go back to the hats real quick. So in the great scene where she tells off Wynn's family, her hat looks like a fucking Dorito. It's just a perfect triangle framing her head. And I just like...
Oh my God. Okay. Yes, you're right. It's 100%. It's like tri-corner hat.
It's just a triangle.
How do you walk outside with that? It's gonna like fly off your head.
Queen Amidala.
People are just experimenting with all sorts of different hats, and sometimes there are hits, and sometimes maybe not so much. Oh, I do have one other note in here, but did you all recognize Dennis Morgan, the guy who played Wynn?
No, I did not. I'm gonna be honest.
So he was actually the singing bridegroom in the wedding cake sequence in The Great Ziegfeld. How did you not recognize? I'm just kidding. I had no way of remembering that, but I did find it out when I was researching.
You sound like a deranged fan of a Star Trek convention.
I was just trying to see if we'd seen him in anything, and I was like, "Oh, he's in The Great." Oh, okay, it's just some random role. No one knows this man.
Guy number 26.
It literally, yeah, exactly. Just some extra in that crazy scene.
That's so funny.
Didn't you guys think that Ginger's voice and persona was very powerful in this movie?
I loved her.
Yeah, I think she's good.
Obviously, we saw her in Stage Door, which was another sort of acting debut, but that was so much more about like the quick-wittedness and the dialogue. This was a much more just like human drama. And I think she did great. I really liked her in this. I just had issues with a lot of the undercurrents of the movie.
Right.
I'm like shell-shocked. I need to have a personal struggle session and try to understand better. I just didn't catch it.
It is designed to not be caught. Like it is literally designed to just become what we are so accustomed to that we treat it as like, if you're outside of these norms, then it is bad. Because I think without the Hays Code, without all of this movie in a vacuum, it's like, yeah, some people are like that and make those choices. But because the Hays Code is dictating what can be shown, what can't be shown, what choices to make, what narrative you want to be the norm, it makes things like this a lot more, just like I said, insidious and kind of gross.
It was written by Dalton Trumbo. He's a communist.
But also in the novel, I'm sure it differs a lot because the novel is not adhered to by the same Hays Code standards. And I don't know if he did the screenplay or the novel or what element he was writing in, but I do know in the novel, Kitty with that pregnancy has an abortion. It's not a miscarriage.
Oh, that would have been cool.
So it is completely different because, again, that is an element that the Hays Code was like, absolutely not. It has to be a tragic thing because she wants children versus obviously in that scenario, she's a woman who is now divorced who has to make that difficult choice. Whether or not she does want children, unclear because I haven't read the book, but she makes that decision, right? So, yeah, Hays Code was like, nah, not here.
Interesting. Wow.
Well,
I have a lot to think about.
Well, it's good that it's our last movie to discuss, so you can, just ruminate on this. Jake is just like coming back from World War I right now,
spiraling.
Figure out. I want to talk more about it, but I don't know what to.
Jake's that like PTSD meme.
I can't remember all the details of the movie. I just remember thinking, damn, she's a badass. So I'm really, there's just certain things, lived experience really counts for a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have even been on the lookout for some of the stuff you guys mentioned.
I think that's fair. Like, I'm not surprised that certain parts of this didn't hit you the same way it did Sarah and I, where it's like, Sarah and I are women who have been trained to like see this kind of stuff. So it makes sense why it wouldn't necessarily hit the same way.
Yeah. And it's just a reminder, obviously I mentioned with minority characters, but especially Black characters at this time and moving forward. But also in like Long Voyage Home, as we joked about, my note being like, the fiery Latino trope. There are all of these things that if you're not part of the in crew where movies get made, where you get a lot of nuance for all sorts of different walks of life and characters, and you're just relegated to a very specific type of role, then you start really noticing what that role says about how you should or should not act.
Yeah, like I'm sure there is stuff that has happened in these movies that we just have, us collectively all have not picked up. Like we haven't clocked at all. And there's someone out there listening to us talk about a movie and being like, how could they not talk about XYZ thing? Or how was this not a deal breaker? And just for whatever it is, just doesn't like stick in the bruise that you have on your skin, right?
Right.
I never should have said Paul Mooney really looks Chinese.
Which, speaking of strong female characters, though, because you walked away with Kitty Foyle, I just have to call back to last episode. Scarlett, she's crazy, but that is a very non-Hays Code type of woman role. The rest of the movie obviously had way more that was bad about it to compensate for the fact that that was the case. But very much, not a Hays Code
I think there's
sort of heroine.
There's something to be said, really, and I think this rings true now too, in terms of like the way we in 2026 are analyzing media, or like how certain readers take certain things. But there's a big difference between a moral character and a strong written character. And like thinking about Betty Davis's character in The Letter, who is ultimately reprehensible, but that character is a really interesting and fascinating piece of fiction. So it's this constant reminder of like, a strong character on the screen is not necessarily a good person or someone who is right. So it's that constant question of, these people aren't real. So like, what is the story being told here? And like, what is the meat on the bone for like the actor to explore? Or what is the point of the character narratively? And I think that especially now, I don't know, I see it a lot online of people like, this story or this character is a bad person. So how dare you like be a fan of this show or this character or this like idea, right?
That's annoying.
Versus like
sometimes unintentional.
Yeah, it's like a huge thing of like wanting to be morally correct because of the things that you like, which is not the point of storytelling. Just being able to differentiate between the moral correctness and like what has narrative strength is like, those are two different things.
Yeah, what liking something means doesn't necessarily mean condoning or anything like that. I'm hoping, I don't know anything about Rebecca, but I'm hoping this conversation dovetails well into Rebecca.
Hopefully so.
Hopefully.
Otherwise, we just went on a wild tangent and cut all that shit out.
I don't understand women at all. I'm realizing today.
You just kind of got to realize that they're just people.
Yeah.
No, you guys have given me a lot to think about. Thank you. This was interesting.
Percolate on that while Hitchcock shows us other weird things about women in marriage.
All right. Well, welcome back, listeners. You are lucky enough to join us after our viewing of Rebecca, the winner for the Academy Awards for Best Picture this year. Now, as always, we like to, remind people, if you're somebody that takes spoilers very seriously, and if you're somebody who's kind of following along with us and watching the movies as we talk about them, do be sure to watch this one before listening to us talk about it, because there are some twists and turns. Rebecca opens on a rocky coastline in the south of France. A handsome, well-dressed man of means, played by Laurence Olivier, is overlooking the crashing waves far beneath him. There's a sadness in his eyes, and for an instant it appears as though he may jump to his demise. Suddenly, a voice cries out, "Stop!" It's a beautiful young woman, played by Joan Fontaine. She has been walking along a nearby path when she stumbled upon the troubled man. The young woman offers him some additional kind words before starting on her way again. The man composes himself and steps back from the precipice. This young woman, who throughout our story actually remains unnamed and will, for the purposes of this summary, be referred to simply as our protagonist, soon returns to her employer, the wealthy and talkative middle-aged socialite Mrs. Van Hopper. Our protagonist, it appears, is acting as a kind of personal assistant to the older woman, somewhat similar to Jennifer Coolidge's character and her young companion in the second season of HBO's series The White Lotus. Mrs. Van Hopper is regaling our young protagonist with tales of the upper class and various bits of wisdom she's acquired over the years, while the two of them relax in the lobby of a ritzy French resort. It's just another day for our protagonist when who should approach the table but the young man from the cliffside. The man sits with the two of them, and in a blunt and brief exchange, directed much more at the young protagonist than her older employer, the man introduces himself formally as Maxim de Winter. He appears fascinated by the pretty young girl and expresses an interest in getting to know her further before abruptly leaving. After the conversation, Mrs. Van Hopper explains that De Winter is a wealthy English landowner and widower who's largely withdrawn from elite social scenes since the tragic and premature death of his much-loved wife, Rebecca De Winter, a year before. Shortly after this, Van Hopper takes ill and is confined to her sumptuous hotel room for the better part of a week while she recovers. During that time, our protagonist pretends to attend daily tennis practice at the hotel. In reality, she begins meeting with and getting to know Maxim De Winter. The two enjoy meals, drives, and other activities in the vicinity of the hotel. Though Maxim remains emotionally distant and at times strikingly aloof, he's nonetheless attractive and clearly begins to develop feelings for our protagonist. Before long, a romance blossoms. Suddenly, just as she's beginning to feel better, Van Hopper gets word that her daughter in the United States is recently engaged and will be married immediately. She and our protagonist must get aboard the next boat for the States. Heartbroken that her dalliance with De Winter is to be cut short by these new circumstances, our protagonist does what she can to get word to Maxim before they depart, but she's unable to do so. As they're about to set out for the docks, she throws caution to the wind and leaves Van Hopper's car as she desperately makes her way to Maxim's hotel room. Finding him there, she sadly explains that their romance must be cut short. De Winter is amused and infatuated with her innocence. In a happy surprise, he proposes to her on the spot. After getting over the initial shock, our protagonist agrees. Van Hopper is shortly informed, and though she appears genuinely happy, she cautions our protagonist that she's about to enter an elite world she understands little as the wife of such a great gentleman. After a whirlwind marriage and honeymoon in France, our protagonist is whisked away in a kind of Cinderella story to her husband's estate in England. Her new residence will be the storied stately home Manderley along the Cornish coast. Manderley is a sprawling, and for a girl with origins as humbly as our young protagonist's, imposing place. Its endless rooms, vaulted halls, and priceless artifacts bristle with history. The estate is staffed by numerous footmen, maids, and other domestic workers, who our protagonist shortly realizes she'll be formally in charge of as the new lady of the house. As our protagonist gets to know everyone and attempts to settle into her new life at Manderley, one name keeps cropping up on everyone's lips and around every corner: Rebecca. Maxim's late wife was by all accounts a very impressive and dynamic person. Everyone in Manderley, from the most studied accountant to the most humble landscaper, seems to worship the dead lady in an almost godlike fashion. Particularly devoted to Rebecca's memory is the estate's foremost lady's maid, Mrs. Danvers, an unnervingly expressionless and monotone woman who immediately sets our protagonist on edge. Away from the carefree atmosphere of France, the new marriage between our protagonist and Maxim becomes strained. Rebecca's shadow looms large, and no matter how hard she tries, the new lady of the house just can't seem to live up to everyone's expectations. She inadvertently reminds Maxim of Rebecca and upsets him when she insists on visiting a nearby beach and an ominous seaside shack on the estate that had been important in Maxim's marriage to Rebecca. Our protagonist accidentally breaks a precious glass object that had belonged to Rebecca. When she ham-fistedly tries to cover it up, it causes a row among the staff, which further tarnishes her own reputation, particularly with the coldly judgmental Mrs. Danvers. Maxim worries that he may have gotten the young girl in over her head by marrying her and throwing her into such a daunting new setting, but the two recommit to each other and promise to make a go of it. Seemingly extending an olive branch, Danvers tours our protagonist throughout the luxuriously spacious but darkly spooky personal apartments of the late Rebecca, unchanged since her death. Danvers sings her former mistress's praises as she does so, and unflatteringly compares her to our protagonist in the process. She points out Rebecca's various personal effects and embroidered bedding as though they were religious relics. Finally, our protagonist makes the decision to reassert herself in her new home. Rather than Manderley remaining a tomb to her predecessor, she decides to hold a large costume party and invite all the well-to-do people of the county, including Maxim's judgmental sister and her husband, in order to usher in a new chapter for the community, with herself front and center in it, distinct from Rebecca. Apparently wanting to help, Danvers suggests that our protagonist have a dress made in imitation of a huge painting of a De Winter ancestor in the Great Hall of Manderley. The two women appear confident that it will please Maxim and help him move past his grief for Rebecca. Preparations for the party unfold, and soon the appointed date arrives. As our protagonist excitedly makes her way down the large staircase in the great hall to greet her husband before all the guests arrived, he recoils at the sight of the dress she specifically had made to please him. What Danvers didn't tell her was that Rebecca had had an identical dress made in the lead up to her last party in Manderley. Maxim's wounds over the loss of Rebecca appear to open all over again, and our protagonist retreats, heartbroken at this, the latest and most egregious of her failures, to her bedroom, away from the partygoers. Sobbing and at her wit's end in her solitary room, our protagonist is soon joined by Mrs. Danvers. Dropping all pretense, the leering woman admits to sabotaging her new mistress's efforts to fit in at Manderley. The young woman can never live up to the example set by the dead Rebecca, according to the pathologically devoted Danvers. As she walks our shaken and vulnerable young protagonist to the bedroom's large window, Danvers begins to encourage the hopeless young woman to jump to her demise. Suddenly, there's a commotion throughout the estate. A ship is sinking near Manderley's coastline, and the whole household and all the partygoers within it rush to help. Our protagonist pulls herself away from Danvers and rushes to the coastline to join in the rescue efforts. When she gets to the beach, things have settled down somewhat, and the crisis is past. She makes her way to the small shack on the beach that Maxim had warned her off of weeks ago, only to find him inside, solitary and smoking a cigarette in the dark. Maxim De Winter, the husband of our protagonist, looks and sounds even more somber than usual, and our protagonist is unnerved. "I just can't escape her," he says. He can't escape the long-dead Rebecca. It seems the boat Rebecca supposedly vanished in a year ago was discovered in this night's rescue efforts at the bottom of the sea off the coast. The strange thing is that while Mr. De Winter had identified the washed-up body of a dead woman several miles up the coast as Rebecca's just a year before, there is another body in this sunken ship that was just discovered that very night. A woman's body. Rebecca's. Furthermore, it appears that she was killed by blunt force trauma, and that her boat had intentionally been sunk. Someone had killed Rebecca, Maxim explains, and then tried to cover it up. That someone, he finally admits, was him. Our protagonist is shocked, but listens intently as Maxim goes into a long explanation that sheds light on the true nature of he and Rebecca's relationship. Rebecca had entrapped Maxim into a marriage when he was a young man. Cruel and unfaithful to him from the start, Rebecca had threatened Maxim that if he ever tried to leave her, she would bring ill repute and scandal to his noble family. So Maxim stayed with her, out of a trapped sense of honor, as she carried on with other men. On the outside, everything looked perfect to dazzled onlookers, but under the surface, their marriage was a sham. Rebecca lived in glamour and splendor in Manderley, while Maxim's resentment grew by the day. Eventually, De Winter explained, Rebecca appeared to become pregnant, not by her husband, but by a cousin of hers she'd been carrying on an affair with flagrantly. She called Maxim to the beach shack to reveal the news to him, and taunted him that one day a child that wasn't even his own would inherit Manderley. That's when Maxim snapped, in his own words. He struck Rebecca, and she fell back and hit her head, dying almost instantly. Panicked, Maxim took Rebecca's body out to sea on her boat, intentionally sank it, and then made his own way back to land. He'd been living with the guilt and dread of what had happened ever since, and now that the boat had been discovered, Maxim was sure that the truth of her death would soon come out as well. Our protagonist takes in this avalanche of revelations. Rather than being horrified that her husband killed his first wife, she's actually overwhelmed with a sense of relief. Rebecca hadn't been the sainted figure everyone made her out to be. According to her husband, she'd been a monster that had ruined his life. Bearing this news in mind, our protagonist recommits herself to him and promises to support him moving forward, come what may. When the investigation is reopened into Rebecca's death, Maxim is eventually called to testify in court regarding some of the new information about the boat and his misidentification of the other dead woman's body. As the investigators press him in the witness box, Maxim loses his temper and flies off the handle. Luckily for him, his wife chooses this same moment to dramatically and loudly faint, causing commotion in the courtroom and forcing them to recess. Our protagonist is taken by Mr. De Winter to his car to recuperate. There, Rebecca's cousin, lover, and supposed father of her unborn child drops in on the couple unexpectedly. With slippery innuendo and striking brashness, the man threatens to divulge to the investigators a letter he has from Rebecca. She sent it to him on the day she died, and it implores him to meet with her. Were the cousin to make the letter known, it would become clear to all that he and Rebecca were carrying on an affair, and that she was with child. To keep his mouth shut, the unsavory cousin demands a large bribe from De Winter. Rather than playing the blackmailer's game, De Winter goes right to the authorities and reports Rebecca's lover's extortion attempt. In the course of doing so, the letter's existence is revealed and indirectly implicates Maxim in her death. But to prove that Rebecca was in fact pregnant, the investigators, De Winter, and the extortionist cousin all elect to visit the London-based doctor that Danvers reveals Rebecca was regularly and secretly seeing under the housemaid's own name in the lead-up to her death. When they arrive, the doctor recalls the beautiful Rebecca, but he soon reveals that far from being pregnant, the young woman had developed terminal cancer in her abdomen. Suddenly, the entire picture looks different. As far as the authorities are concerned, if Rebecca was facing imminent death, it's much more likely that she took her own life on that boat rather than that she was murdered. From Maxim's perspective, Rebecca wasn't gloating about cuckolding him. She was trying to bait him into murdering her so that she wouldn't have to face a slower death by her cancer, and she was successful in that. With the weight of imminent incarceration off his shoulders, Maxim rushes back to Manderley, where his new wife is waiting. But before he can get there, a crazed Mrs. Danvers, unable to process so much new information about the actual nature of Rebecca's demise, sets fire to the entire estate. Danvers and Rebecca's belongings go up in flames along with the rest of the estate. But our protagonist escapes the conflagration just in time and makes her way into the arms of her husband. For the first time, the two of them have escaped Rebecca's shadow. Maybe now they can finally begin life anew. And I would love to talk to you guys about your feelings regarding this movie.
Whoa. All right, go, Abby.
Man, this movie rips.
It was so good. It was very, very good.
Okay, so we were talking about this definitely happened moments ago, not yesterday when we recorded the other half of this episode. Mm-hmm. We were talking about the difference between a morally good character and a strong character. And it is, thanks for validating that conversation, Hitchcock. In such an immediate fashion. But the fact that Rebecca is the best written female character we've seen in movies, and she's not even in this movie, and it rules.
It's wild.
So
cool. Shout out to Joan Fontaine, because the protagonist, or whatever we want to call her character, because she critically never is named other than she only gets called
second
Mrs. De Winter or
Mrs. Danvers.
or Darling.
Ms. Danvers wishes. Yeah. Very importantly, we get a lot of subjective point of view in this movie.
Absolutely.
Right off the bat, as we hear Joan Fontaine's kind of reminiscing about Manderley, and several times through the movie in really powerful ways, we see that what I'm going to call like a ghostly point of view in that fantastic scene where Maxim is recounting what happened kind of in their fatal argument. And it's following where they would have been, but it's current day empty room. Like, oh man, this movie was incredible. Just so many things that they were doing.
He has an eye for staging that I think is basically still unmatched in terms of practical settings. His ability to look at like a vaulted room or a hallway or the way something is lit naturally and to craft a scene out of that. I mean, the setting is a character in and of itself. It's crazy how this is totally a ghost story, the first half in particular. And the tension is so striking, but there's no supernatural element on the surface. There's no like killer around every corner.
Right.
It's just this oppressive, omnipresent presence of Rebecca, this woman that this young girl cannot get out from under. And the way everyone is almost like Kim Jong-un brainwashed in the household into worshiping her, even in death, is like, you feel like you're in a horror movie. You really do.
He started early in his career as an art director, and I feel like so much of that paid off. I found out while researching during our break that, and I didn't catch on, like sometimes it was obvious when things were like matte paintings or a screen, behind. But apparently there were tons of parts in this movie where they would have some sets and obviously some miniatures, one small, one slightly larger. But I didn't even realize that what they would often do, partially for like a cost sort of thing, is they would paint part of the film directly on the film black and then send that to the special effects department where a matte painter would paint and have that exposed directly onto that black part of the film. And a lot of the ceilings that we were seeing to really bring those sets to life, to make them seem very grand and huge, were actually matte paintings. And I couldn't tell.
Crazy.
They just look like big sets.
Very seamless.
Yeah, they look incredible.
I almost don't want to know which are which. Like, I want to leave it to my imagination to think. Like,
Just, you can't tell. And the ambiance and everything here was so good. And like you said, the tension, Mrs. Danvers, I feel like we have to talk about her because she never blinked. And she would just appear in rooms like the woman was jump scare personified. And it was just so eerie throughout the entire thing. And I think really played off of Joan Fontaine's, or the protagonist's, self-consciousness early on and her discomfort. And I feel, again, going back to a point of view, not necessarily literal point of view camera shots, but I do think so much of us being introduced to Manderley is seeing it through the second Mrs. De Winter's eyes, right? Which is very like uncertain of yourself, feeling out of place. And it's just like this oppressive sort of place that she doesn't fit into, closing in on her. And Mrs. Danvers is such a big part of that. She did great. Like, I'm very spooky.
Yeah, I think to your point, Sarah, about in terms of talking about the protagonist and how this is such a subjective point of view, I think that this is such an interesting example of, we've watched a lot of what I would call like gothic romances or melodrama and that kind of stuff. And I feel like the real defining difference between this and some of the other ones that we've watched is how deeply this movie seems to be embedded specifically in a point of view from a character within it versus like, I don't know, thinking about Wuthering Heights, even though I love Wyler a lot in terms of how he shoots and like the performances he gets, it's always the audience looking into these stories rather than
that's a good way to
this
put it.
has a real like, you are inside the story and like you are the protagonist. That's like how the entire thing is shot and how the story is portrayed. It's really, really fascinating and obviously looks fantastic. And I do think just like, while we're shouting out actresses, I love Ginger Rogers, but it's crazy to me that Joan Fontaine didn't win for this, because she is so good.
So good. Because she really, like, obviously, as she matures through these crazy events, especially towards the end of the movie where she is, as you mentioned, freak for freak, staying by Laurence Olivier's side and so relieved. She's like, oh, thank God you hated your wife.
She doesn't care that he accidentally killed her.
No, she does care. She loves it. She's like, oh my God, I thought that you kept comparing me to her, and that like visible relief.
Yeah, it's such a good twist.
Compare her to the beginning of the movie when she's just like kind of this bright-eyed, optimistic, sort of sweet, mousy girl, right? Who just gets swept up in this world that she's not prepared for. But then she really comes into herself towards the end of it, and she's like, oh no, this reality I can deal with. I couldn't deal with being out of place and constantly compared to someone I can't, the heights of which I cannot reach, but totally down to be together knowing that you accidentally killed your wife.
The performance definitely builds over the movie because in the beginning she's very breathy, very I couldn't But
and
then
her body
as
language,
you
she
are,
would have the hunched shoulders and kind of very meek.
Yeah, but you so sympathize with her as she's just constantly gaslit and backhanded by all these foppish British aristocrats, and she can't do anything right, and she's a young girl, and you just feel so much sympathy for her. And then when there's that incredible reveal that I think we were all like, I was trying to guess what happened because I was like, if it was a modern day thing, maybe they would have done he was sleeping with the other guy who's so kind of on the margins, but like a snake oil salesman. And like that was the reason the marriage came apart. But to have it be revealed, in the way that it was like I was not expecting that. And I gotta, the thing I look for in movies is show me something I haven't seen before. And I felt that today. And this movie is from before World War II. So that's incredible.
I don't have a good segue into this really, unless we're talking about, I guess, the way power shifts in the movie. But I think that I'm trying to think of a good word for this. The specter of sexuality in this movie in terms of sexual power, where the beginning of the movie, just because of how we understand her and she's very innocent, and then Maxim is coming in and really infantilizing her and treating her like a child. And then as we slowly learn more and more about Rebecca, who is clearly this sexually liberated, promiscuous woman, our understanding of Maxim starts to shift too, in terms of he really starts to feel like a character who is both has been entrapped by that, but also kind of he starts to look really like a person who is capable of being dominated in some sense. And that kind of starts to tilt the power towards the protagonist in a really fascinating way. Also, you have all these sexual transgressive things happening with Danvers showing the protagonist Rebecca's underwear and putting her hands inside the clothing. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that was definitely a nod. Obviously Hays Code couldn't have any sort of explicit Mrs. Danvers was obsessed with her, was in love with Rebecca. But I feel like that was definitely the filmmakers. Anyone who
absolutely.
isn't a child could catch on to that,
Yeah. But yeah, there's something interesting happening there in terms of the power dynamic, especially with relation to how Maxim is being portrayed on screen in terms of him being a very stolid, inaccessible character at the beginning. And then as his power over the relationship is revealed to be weaker, he becomes a weaker character. It's interesting.
You're right. She almost starts to feel pity for him, she's got to intervene to protect him, when up to this point she was doing everything she could in her mind to please him.
And I feel in some ways we are then seeing him probably as Rebecca saw him, as someone who you could take advantage of this man, Yeah. And Rebecca did, whereas obviously our protagonist actually cares for him.
It's crazy to think of this story from Maxim's point of view, when she comes down the stairs in the dress that Rebecca was wearing, of he's seeing a fucking ghost.
Yeah.
He's seeing a woman that he murdered come down the stairs. That's crazy. No wonder he flips out.
It's one of those ones that on second viewing is going to have a totally different, I'm not ready to watch it again yet, but when I do in a couple of years, whatever it is with other new people, I'll be like, okay, now I see it,
I love too the concept of Danvers as Rebecca's agent from the afterlife, especially in that last beat where Manderley is burning and you see her in the house and she's just the shadow. And that is such the epitome of what you think of when you see a ghost in a haunted house, and it's just the shape of a woman in a house. And that's basically what she is. It's Danvers, but it's also that is absolutely Rebecca's ghost in the house.
Better ghost story than Smiling Through and Our Town. So I think we have our best ghost story. But apparently the producer, David O. Selznick, actually wanted the smoke from Manderley to spell out a huge R. And Alfred Hitchcock was no, that lacks subtlety. That's absolutely wild. And Selznick, because these were filming at the same time as Gone with the Wind was, so Selznick was often off dealing with production for that obviously gargantuan movie.
He was harassing 3 directors to make Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, exactly. 3 different, trying to herd cats, trying to herd cats.
Herding turtles, I've heard.
Yeah, herding turtles. So while he was busy with that, Hitchcock replaced, because they did film, like they had the R and smoke and stuff with whatever special effects they'd done. But then he replaced those final shots directly in camera with the monogrammed lingerie case instead with the R. So it's like, look, you still get your R, but we're not going to do a dumb, smoky, like in the sky sort of thing. Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a callback. And again, it ties it all back to Danvers, as Abby is saying, also like Rebecca's hand from the grave. This worked much, much better, and Selznick didn't have the opportunity to re-edit because they ran out of time. So
I want a prequel sub. I want to see Rebecca. I mean, obviously she had problems, but she must be like the most charismatic person that ever lived based on the way everybody's talking about her. You know, but also that would take away the mystique. I guess.
It would. Yeah, no, I think I love it as it is. But you saying that made me realize like Vivian Leigh could have definitely played like the OG Rebecca. And once again, this is another case where Laurence Olivier wanted Vivian Leigh to play the protagonist in this, which I think Vivian Leigh in Wuthering Heights, yes, absolutely. I can see Vivian Leigh as the protagonist in this. I think Joan Fontaine just fully embodied that character so much that I can't really imagine anyone else doing it. So.
And it bears, if we haven't mentioned yet, Joan Fontaine is the younger sister of Olivia de Havilland, who we've seen many times in other movies, and is a spitting image of her. And they both had a career-long rivalry.
Which I think we'll find out more next year because, as we know, Ginger Rogers won Best Actress this year. Joan Fontaine, I think, should have. But next year, I believe Joan Fontaine won her Best Acting Oscar, which again seems like one of those like, we wanted to give it to you last year, sorry, here it is for this year sort of thing. But I think Olivia de Havilland was also up for Best Actress, and I think that's might have been where some of that rivalry intensified.
Drama.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you guys are right that she embodies this character. Excellent casting. And she does what she needs to do really effectively. But from a performance perspective, I would still give it to Ginger. I think she has to do more
That's interesting.
in that movie. And she's just so powerful to me. We'll get back to it later.
I will say I really love, just speaking in terms of like how this movie is divided into sections. I love a script where we get a twist in terms of like our understanding of the setting in the movie, in this case where Maxim talks about hating his wife and murdering her, allegedly. And then it completely changes the movie, and also it doesn't happen in the last like 15 minutes or whatever. Love a suspense movie, for lack of a better word, where not every secret is revealed in the last 10 minutes. It's such a relief to be able to watch a movie and not just spend the entire runtime asking a question. Like sometimes that's necessary and good, but I feel like a lot of suspense or mystery movies really hold that stuff back for so long that you can't even sit with it. So it's really fun to have that. Like, obviously, there are subsequent twists that further complicate that do happen towards the end of the movie. But it's nice to, like, have your footing as an audience in some way.
Yeah, to see the things play out. You need the payoff of the stakes of that.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking of it, part of it, I think, is that, especially in a mystery where oftentimes you are so locked into the point of view of your protagonist character, quite literally here, right, is the longer you keep every part of a mystery back, the less agency your protagonist has. So allowing some of that stuff to slip gives your protagonist like some strength to actually bring to the narrative instead of just being an observer. Like you can start to actually like participate in the story. It's so nice to see, especially in a movie that is being led by a woman, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Led by a woman, about a woman. The male lead is knocked down a peg, as you say, as it goes on. All breath of fresh air, because Hitchcock is also kind of known for being a little leering, shall we say, with many of his actresses, especially in his later years. So that's good. But that husband does have a lot of, oh my God, a lot of those lines to her are just like, holy shit. Like, don't ever grow old. Like, just that kind of stuff constantly.
Okay, since we're going to like start transitioning into talking about other movies, I think this movie is basically doing the opposite of what Kitty Foyle does, where it's like, for me anyway, the characters are all saying these things that are like abhorrent. Infantilizing, terrible. But like the undercurrent narrative of that is kind of resisting that versus for me, Kitty Foyle is very much in the opposite direction. It's like where all the characters are saying these things that are very like transgressive or like strong woman character TM, but the underrunning narrative is not doing that at all. What a great dichotomy between these two movies.
Yeah, it did work out really well, the sequence of this year.
No, I fully agree with that. And then I think especially when we learn more about Maxim's character in this, where it's like, oh, he wishes he could go back to a time before he was embroiled in all of this nonsense. So his infantilizing her is really more of like his projection of where he wants to be, where she can actually handle a lot more than what he is like asserting, you know?
You almost get the vibe of him like a kid that wrecked the house when his parents were away and his friend stumbles in after and he's like, help me, you know, like I don't know how I got myself into this and I don't know what to do now. But and can we talk about George Saunders for a second? I mean, this guy is like a scene chewer.
He really
I would
is.
never want to be in a scene with him because I'm just throwing the towel because
The scene with them in the car is amazing.
Yes. Well, you pointed out great writing because, you know, there's a lot of subtle ways you can attempt to blackmail somebody. But whatever phrasing he used in that was so cool that you're just like, you know what? I'm going to let you blackmail me just because of how well you worded that.
It's just him being like, I've always wondered how much it costs to go live and not have to work on a nice little piece of acreage. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yep. And he got away with it too, you know? Yeah. He also was like, well, all's well that ends well, chaps. Like, that's about it.
Yeah, the cop, I think Hitchcock is like playing with the audience there where the cop is like, you're not supposed to park here. And you think like, is he going to get arrested? And he's just like, shut the fuck up. Yeah. And he just leaves. And it's like, damn, this is the type of guy that's going to get away with fucking everything in his life.
Yeah.
My last note on this is that I'm obsessed with, they use the windscreen frame of the car. So there are all these shots that are like two people in the front seat of a car. It's like, you know, the standard, we've got a projection in the background. So it's not like they're actually driving. And there is like the windshield or the windscreen for this car is in front of them. And it has this excellent frame around the windscreen. And I don't even know, I don't have any idea about cars from the 40s, but I feel like it's rare to have that upper edge on the glass. But what it does is it creates this really excellent like line directly across the frame. And it's used to great effect every time you have the protagonist, Joan, like sitting on the right hand side and then Maxim on the left in the beginning of the movie, where he, because of like the hat he's wearing and how tall he is, he breaks outside of the frame. And then she is like relegated to this little teeny tiny box on the side of the screen. It's fantastic. And then they do it the same when Maxim and can't remember his like accountant, but when they're coming back to Manderley at the very end and like as they see the glow of it above the trees and that kind of thing, it's used the opposite effect where like Collie, or I can't remember his name and I don't see something, is wearing like a pale hat and it's nighttime, so he sticks above that edge of the windscreen, but Maxim is wearing a dark hat, so it blends into the darkness behind him, so he's again like this little teeny tiny face at the side of the frame. It's amazing. Fantastic.
What a cool
Excellent.
thing to cue in on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If Hitchcock was alive, he'd be applauding you. Right?
That's right.
I doubt that. He'd be like, oh, what does a woman care about movies?
Oh, no. He'd be like, Pippi Hedren is still alive? Where is she?
Oh, boy.
Oh, shit. That was a fun one.
Yeah, great.
We're
great.
entering, we're breaking barriers every year now in one way or another, it feels like. I'm excited.
Well, I guess on that note, do we want to give our recommendations from this year?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Who's going first for a very up and down kind of year?
Go for it, Jake.
Well, as listeners will probably remember, I absolutely adored The Grapes of Wrath. I really thought that was a great movie, very cutting edge, progressive, good theme movie. So can't recommend that enough. Kind of the origin story of the Fonda dynasty in American culture, I would say. Our Town was a crock of shit. I wish I hadn't watched that. I kind of was like, had existential dread at several points through that. It was like not good for my mental health. So don't watch Our Town. All This in Heaven 2, boring, the least entertaining Betty performance I've seen, but I would not say it's her fault. I think they just said, Betty, you have to do something normal, quote unquote, and she did it, and we were all the worse off for it. Foreign Correspondent, especially after the movie I just watched, I didn't really care for it. I know Hitchcock is doing his thing in that. Love the windmill sequence, some of the tension-filled sequences, but the story was not there for me. The characters were not there for me, and it dragged to me, so I didn't like it. Long Voyage also just didn't have a lot of heart to me. Big sausage fest. Wasn't compelled by a lot of the drama. Liked a couple of the conversations about alcoholism, but overall just kind of a drag. Great Dictator, man, I think this is the best satire movie ever made. I mean, it could not be more timely and relevant today. And for a movie to stand the test of time over that long of a period, I mean, that says it all right there. Watch it if you want to laugh, but most importantly, watch it if you want to feel not so crazy about the times we're living through. The Letter, absolutely adored this movie. William Wyler does it again. His world building, his partnership with Bette Davis, we've seen a few times. The twist in that one, while not as maybe intensive as the one that we just saw, also really compelling. A really cool entry in early noir, and I just can't wait to see more from Willie. Philadelphia Story, I did not like. I felt it to be immoral and bohemian, and I don't like the foppish wealthy and their callousness towards marriage and love. It's just not my cup of tea. I don't like it at all. Kitty Foyle, here we go. Kitty Foyle, I've learned a lot in talking with you guys about your interpretation of Kitty Foyle. It's clued me into things that I want to be more conscious of moving forward. I think my critical error is that I felt Ginger's performance was so strong and interesting that she was kind of knowingly commentating on some of those retrograde, expectations of women and backward-looking interpretations of a woman's role. So I thought that it was like transgressive in that way, when in reality it may have literally been like all Kitty Foyle needed was to hunker down with a boring man, and that would have set her straight. Which, if that is the case, and that was your interpretation as two women, I gotta go with that and say, while I enjoyed it and I really liked Ginger's performance, maybe a little bit of a toxic movie. So there's that. Rebecca, can't recommend enough. I mean, I've seen a lot of Hitchcock. This is now one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. I had known him from the 50s and all the great vibrant color he's a master of. Here he is in black and white doing his thing just as strongly. So thank you, Alfred, you creeper.
I feel like I'm going to learn, obviously throughout the podcast, we'll learn a lot more about Hitchcock, but I'm going in as blind as someone can be to Hitchcock. Again, only seen a couple of things and don't know much about him as a person or director. So I feel like I'm in for some surprises is what it feels like.
Well, famously, he kind of later in his career did not get the kind of recognition that he did earlier. So I actually don't know that a lot of the films he's most famous for were very much, nominated for many things. So we might have to do some, bonus episode segues
extracurricular activities.
Point, Yeah.
Right. Extra homework. All right. Abby, your recommendations.
I'm going to say The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Dictator, and Rebecca. The Grapes of Wrath, especially, I think if you don't get Henry Fonda as a person who was a Henry Fonda hater in our Jezebel episode, being like, what the fuck is this dude's deal? He's giving me nothing. He's spectacular in The Grapes of Wrath. Great Dictator, I think I agree. Jake, I think it's probably one of the best satires that I've seen, certainly. And Rebecca's just like such a banger. And then I try not to do these like runner-up things because I think it's wishy-washy, but also I enjoyed The Letter and The Philadelphia Story.
I was surprised The Letter didn't make it on yours, but okay. That's fine.
I enjoyed it kind of as a proto-noir. I think that there's a lot of stuff to love in there in terms of like Wyler's direction, but I know that there are better things coming from that kind of fit this similar molds. And if
that's fair,
you're a person who is not going to go watch every Oscars movie and you only have so much time on this earth to watch movies, then skip that one. I'm sure there will be another one to recommend.
Yellowface didn't help it either.
It would have rocked if the Singaporean wife was, actually from Singapore.
Well, I was willing to compromise on that. So sorry, Singaporeans.
I don't mind being wishy-washy with some of my recommendations, but I will tell you which ones are the strong ones and which ones aren't. So Grapes of Wrath, as I mentioned while we were talking about it, for whatever reason, something about Steinbeck narrative structure doesn't always keep me engaged throughout the movie, but I do think the movie looked great. It's an important movie with an important message, and Henry Fonda's performance was phenomenal. So I do recommend it, but more strongly for people who like really like Of Mice and Men or that area of social awareness. You're following more like the main character is these social constructs rather than necessarily just one sort of protagonist in my opinion. And then Foreign Correspondent, I enjoyed. Again, I didn't have a lot of Hitchcock to compare to, so I thought it was fun. Like I said, kind of felt like an Ernst Lubitsch does a war movie, even though it was not. It was Alfred Hitchcock. Comparing to Rebecca, though, like I'm just like, damn, this is the same director. That's kind of crazy. So light recommendation there. It was fun, had some good plot twists, but not at all to the caliber of other movies that exist. Great Dictator, as everyone has said, incredible movie. Absolutely worth watching. Surprisingly hilarious and incredibly relevant still today. Very satisfying to watch in our modern times. So that one I think is a not only must watch, but like you can't skip it. Like that one you need to watch. Philadelphia Story was fun. I liked the trio, but that would be a super light recommendation. I think there are better comedies and better performances even with those actors that we've seen. And then Rebecca that we just watched, loved it. Absolutely go and watch that one from start to finish. It was just, you were on a journey and it looked great. And I don't know, it was just tense throughout. So those would be my recommendations. I'm a little worried about my reaction to some noir movies, but we'll see. We'll see as we go forward.
Well, you softened a little bit on Westerns, I feel like, you know.
A little bit with Stagecoach.
I think you enjoyed Stagecoach, so you have the capacity to reform.
I think, and there's a lot of stuff like in the noir milieu that is more Foreign Correspondent-y than the lettery. So.
Maltese Falcon next year will be a big test.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
That's like a pretty big standard bearer for the genre.
All right, well, I'm sweating. We'll see. Listeners, stay tuned. Because I know it is a very important genre that has done a lot for film. So I'll have to like revoke my cinephile card or whatever. All right. Well, for the winner of this year.
So sweaty.
I know.
This is hard, actually.
Jake.
Me first?
Yes, we do the same order. So thanks for taking one for the team while the rest of us have some extra time.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick the one. So there's like three in my mind, but I'm going to pick the one that for me, here's what it is. There's a couple movies this year that were so of their time and very culturally commentating in really important and compelling ways. I'm a bit of an optimistic person. And so I liked the one that was kind of constructively a victory lap for the New Deal. So I'm going to say The Grapes of Wrath. I'm going to follow up my Of Mice and Men last year. I'm finding out I'm a big Steinbeck head here. And I just like that vibe. I like the from the grassroots kind of plugged in nature of that storytelling. And I was blown away by that movie. I really enjoyed it. It was a great one out of the gates for an otherwise, like I said, up or down year. Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if that one won. All right, Abby.
Sweaty. I think it's so hard because I want to break the statue in half and give it to both The Great Dictator and Rebecca. And it's that thing of, we talked a bit yesterday about like not knowing what you don't know, right? Where in 2026, Abby, I'm like, oh, I want to give it to The Great Dictator because it's doing something that a movie wouldn't manage to do again for like another 40 years in terms of satirizing like the Nazi regime in a way that I think is actually very important. And obviously the final speech is like a spectacular piece of script writing and the performance is wonderful. But I think that I want to give it a million other awards, particularly for like writing and acting. And I think that Rebecca being the winner of the Oscar like makes sense to me just in terms of how meticulously put together it is. But then it's like we get into this weird conversation of like what matters more, like how well something is put together or what the actual message is. I don't know. But for me personally, Rebecca's just so much more my shit in terms of like what I like.
I'm just
from a
glad
movie.
Someone's saying that. So that's fine with me.
Yeah. So like, I think probably The Great Dictator is the more important movie and the movie that probably everyone should go watch. Rebecca is like such a my shit movie. And I totally see why people were like blown away with it and gave it a million awards at the Oscars, particularly in the not knowing what you don't know kind of thing of like, you don't know how effective The Great Dictator is going to continue to be 100 years from when you're not giving it an Oscar. So unfortunately, I'm going to make the same mistake as the Academy and say Rebecca radical, and I love it. And I do. I think that movie rules. But yeah.
Nuts and bolts. It's a fantastic movie, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Like, it almost hurts not to give it to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I basically agree on all counts. I think, as you said, The Great Dictator, a more important movie with a more important message that came out at a very important time, right? But Rebecca, I think, did so much in terms of all of the point of view stuff, not only with the literal camera work, but really putting yourself in the shoes of this protagonist going on this full tense journey that just really drags you along, for lack of a better term, throughout the entire thing, was so effective. And I think so much of what they did with the film editing, with the cinematography, with just the art direction as a whole, very likely we'll start seeing those impacts in other movies continuing forward. Like, I think it did do, quite a bit for the medium as a whole. And I love a murder mystery, and also love, like, I don't know, just the creepiness of Mrs. Danvers specifically in this too. There were just like all of these elements that I really, really loved. And the score too was also used very, very, very effectively throughout the entire thing. And I think it's just it's a really hard thing to do, to make you really feel the presence of a character that you never see on screen. And to do that for 2 hours is insane.
Yeah, this is one of the longer movies we watched this year, and it does not feel like that at all.
No,
yeah, it didn't feel like it.
And it did feel like
half
a
as long as
couple
Our Town.
different types of movies together, but seamlessly. It was really cool.
Right. I think probably the first half of the movie, I was still leaning towards The Great Dictator as my choice. But then as things continued to build and reveal themselves, then Rebecca did eventually win me over, which is really hard to say because,
If you had said The Great Dictator, we'd have covered all our bases. But
I know, we would have.
I respect your dedication to the truth.
If I had to tell people to watch just one of these movies, it would be The Great Dictator.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, right?
Is like,
it's very strange.
Is I would tell
too.
people to go watch that, but for me, Rebecca is like takes it. That's so weird.
I know, it's really weird. Like, I can't fully make that make sense, but that is
Wow, this turned out to be a more thought-provoking year than I thought.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, everyone, looking forward to the 14th year of the Oscars. The official list of our nominees: we've got Blossoms in the Dust, Citizen Kane, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, Hold Back the Dawn, The Little Foxes, The Maltese Falcon, One Foot in Heaven, Sergeant York, Suspicion, and then the winner, How Green Was My Valley.
I'm going to make a bet right now that I hate Here Comes Mr. Jordan. I know nothing about it, but just based on the title alone. There's just a folksiness to that title that I cannot abide.
I'm looking forward to see if it holds up to just your immediate knee-jerk reaction to just an innocent, simple title.
How Green Was My Valley is supposed to be one of John Ford's best. It's about Welsh miners, I think. So I'm already in on that.
Ooh, excited to return to the mining storyline that established in The Citadel, a movie we all definitely remember.
Yep, we yearn for the mines here on the pod. All right, well, thank you all for joining us, and be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and join us next year for the 14th year of the Academy Awards.
I know that we typically save this for our roundup episodes, but between Anthony Adverse and Our Town, which is the shittier movie?
Oh my God. Our Town, 100%. I hated Our Town viscerally. Anthony Adverse, I had a grand time with that terrible movie. Our Town was torturous for me.
Yeah. Yeah, see, Our Town makes the critical mistake of being both bad and boring.
That's true.
You can't do that.
Exactly.
Okay, I guess really I should say Our Town or Trader Horn.
We learned about animals in training.
It's like I'm silent. I had to sit and think about that one for a second. The movie with literal human and animal death, and we're still like, our town really sucked, you guys.
Like, little guy, hippos used to fly. They don't tell you that anymore. Just making shit up.
Our town, like Jake said, our town was just dreadfully boring on top of being really bad. So I don't know. I think it might be the worst movie we've seen. I don't know. I don't know if anything will take the crown from Our Town at this point. Abby, is there a movie that you think is worse currently? I just want to track this for.
No, I mean, I think Our Town is fucking miserable.
It was so bad. All right. Well, glad we're all on the same page about that.
I mean, again,
it might make our
Trader Horn did literally kill animals and people. So that must be noted. But just in terms of like a viewing experience, oh my God.
Right. I think it's kind of like the antithesis of what we decided for the winner and the most important film this year, where we chose differently. So kind of it's the inverse of that, where Trader Horn is like the worst movie and should not have been made. And Our Town was the worst to watch. So,
yeah, absolutely.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, we've really brought this full circle.
We really did. We connected. That's what we do here.
You brought up that question. It'll be a nice little preview of our later discussion.